Joe Rogan Podcast, check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day. Jordan, pleasure to meet you, man.
Yeah, good to meet you, bro.
Really pleasure to meet you. I'm a big fan. I think what you're doing, first of all, I think it's amazing that no one's talked you into doing MMA. It's incredible.
I've been close.
How close?
But mostly the lady outside, my wife, Lauren.
Really?
Is the one that's talked me out of it.
Really?
Yeah, bro. Like, when I graduated from college in 2011, University of Nebraska, wrestling was still on the brink of, if it was in its infancy of marketing and branding and really making it a professional career. So MMA was the new kid on the block, and it was growing and expanding. And we had a lot of our guys transitioning in. Henry Cejudo, Ben Askren, Daniel Cormier. And so I really thought about it. I was like, okay, I'm going to wrestle in the Olympics in London 2012, win the gold, and then I'm going to make the transition to MMA. I'll be 25 years old. I'll have plenty of time. And then I met Lauren. And she's like, listen, you're doing well in the sport. Stay here. You're comfortable. It's just a different sport, MMA, in comparison to wrestling. But it's a good thing.
It is a different sport, and it also has a lot more head trauma. And there's a lot of things to consider.
100%. That's what I think about all the time. Listen, I think about going to MMA until I see a guy like Platinum Mike Perry get his whole thing split, nose crooked. I'm like, I'm good. It's like in wrestling, you lose, you get taken down, pushed out, you get pinned. In fighting, you lose, you get something broken, choked out, tap. It's unconscious. It's a very, very different sport. Wrestling, it's you score as many points as possible, doing the least damage as possible. And MMA, I feel like it's different.
It's a shame that there's not more attention put on the professional, like at one point in time, professional wrestling was actual wrestling.
Yeah.
It wasn't like WWE entertainment. It was professional wrestling, and it was done for. Why can't they do that? I know they tried to do that a few years back. There was an organization, I think. Was it Kevin Jackson that was doing it?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was doing something where he was doing a professional wrestling organization, but it just didn't catch on for some reason. But yet, golf is on TV.
For sure.
Baseball and all these things that are...
Bags, bro. Yeah. Cornhole. I was watching the Cornhole Championships on ESPN the other day. I'm like, bro, this is wild. Like, Cornhole is on ESPN more often than wrestling.
But isn't that just now because there's no crowds and COVID and there's all the weirdness and there's a lot of shit that's on. Like if you follow Sports Center on Instagram, like half the shit they do is like people in their backyard like doing crazy dunks and stuff.
Mm-hmm. I think the invention of the internet has definitely changed the game for our sport. We are in an epic time where anyone can be famous. All you need is an iPhone, cell phone, period. Like, if you can film footage and upload it and it's funny, it's inventive, it's disruptive, like, you have an audience and people are going to follow it. So people that are going viral now and becoming superstars aren't even the most particularly talented people in society. They just have a niche and they know how to stay consistent with it.
Well, sometimes it doesn't even make sense. Like something just catches. Like, remember the dude that was on the skateboard doing Fleetwood Mac?
Cranberry juice.
Yeah. Like, just for whatever reason, everybody's like, that guy looks like he's having
Get
fun.
this man a truck. Get him more cranberry juice.
And now he's on. He's always on podcasts. He's all over the place.
He's a man.
He bought a house. He bought a car. I mean, it's really incredible.
But that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it, is it gives people an opportunity. There it is right there. Yeah. So it was professional wrestling league that they established. And, when people reference what we do, I call it Olympic wrestling. Honestly, I don't even call it professional wrestling because that is kind of an ode to the WWE and old time WWF. So it's a unique thing that we had at this time. This is Tommy Rollins, Daniel Cormier, both extremely competitive, both great wrestlers, Oklahoma State, Ohio State. This probably was around 04, 05-ish. So I was still in high school. Real Pro Wrestling, that's right. So they had different cities across the country that had their own teams. It was almost like XFL-esque. It kind of had that vibe. And
that's Rulon Gardner.
Yeah, Rulon Gardner.
And who's the...
Tim Johnson in the middle. He works for the Big Ten Network and also for ESPN. He does commentary for the NCAA championships yearly. And then the last guy is Nate Carr, who was a NCAA champ, world medalist.
And Rulon is another guy that made the transition. He made the transition to MMA.
Did he? I didn't know that.
Yeah. He fought a bunch of times over in Japan. And actually,
That's crazy.
I think what stopped him was he lost a toe in a frostbite accident.
He's a former Cornhusker.
Is
so
he?
we went to the same university, and I got a chance to kind of spend some time with Rulon, but he was out when I was kind of transitioning in.
Oh.
And so he's an interesting cat, and he is one of those guys that's like shrouded in this mystery, but there's so many like epic stories about who he was, what he's done, how much he's eaten.
He's a gorilla, dude.
Massive,
in real life,
massive
you
man.
see the size of that guy.
Massive man. And then obviously him beating Carellin, which is pretty much considered the most legendary victory in wrestling history.
That's a weird victory, right? Because it's like Carellin, all he did was get Carellin to break his grip.
Yeah.
And it was a new rule, right?
Yep. The rules are evolving all the time in wrestling. So it's one of those rule changes that year in particular, which it didn't translate well to the average fan. So like the toughest thing about wrestling is that the rules change so often that a non-traditional wrestling fan can't really keep up. You watch a football game, listen, you put the ball into the end zone, it's 6 points, extra point, a point, field goal, 3 points, right? Safety 2. You watch basketball, if you're behind this arc, it's 3 points. If you're within it, it's 2 points. In wrestling, there's so many different subjective rule sets that you're like, okay, well, if you unlock your hands here, or if this guy gets pushed out of bounds, it's a point. But if you shove him out of bounds, it's no points. If he's grounded, it's no points. But if his knee's off the mat, then it's a point. So there's so many different like little nuances in the sport that make it difficult to follow. And even if you're within it, like sometimes you have to address what the rule set is before you even compete in a tournament. There are times where we're meeting with administration and referees before we compete at the Olympics, World Championships, just so we can stay current on the rule set for that year, because it's
just that much,
always evolving.
Is that something that plays in your head while you're actually competing? Do you have to think like, oh, wait a minute, what's the rule for this place?
That's a good question. I think in the heat of the moment, sometimes I imagine you've seen it a lot in MMA, whether it's a guy, hitting someone in the back of the head, or kicking them when they're down on a knee, like all these little things that when you're in the battle and you're fired up and you're trying to put this man out, like you don't even think about the rule set. You just, it has to be programmed. I think experience, just multiple times within this position, there's a certain level of savviness and mental toughness that you have to get there.
They've had a hard time getting people to watch any kind of grappling that don't grapple. I think that's a problem with jiu-jitsu. And one of the things they did with jiu-jitsu, they've come up with this new thing called combat jiu-jitsu. Eddie Bravo came up with it.
Okay.
And it's basically jiu-jitsu with slapping. It's kind of fucking crazy.
What?
Yeah, man. It's crazy. You gotta watch it. It's crazy.
Like in the face?
Yeah.
Or
like,
elsewhere.
The thing is, like you can punch to the body and you slap to the face. The thing is with jiu-jitsu positions, there's a lot of unrealistic positions when it comes to MMA.
Yeah.
Where like guys are hanging on an ankle and the guy's right over him and he can just start blasting him in the face. There's the thing about leg lockers are much more sophisticated now than they were back in the day.
Sure.
But early in the UFC, you saw some cases where guys would go for leg locks. And see, this is combat jiu-jitsu. So
Come on, bro.
Yeah.
Stop.
But it works.
Look like two siblings fighting over the last Rice Krispie treat.
That's kind of a crazy. That's Wagner Rocha, who's fought MMA before, and he's a beast.
Is he tough?
Yeah, he's a bad motherfucker.
Okay.
He's a bad motherfucker, and he wound up winning the. I think he won the whole tournament because he's got so much experience with strikes and jiu-jitsu as it is, and he's a elite black belt.
See, that's the thing. Like, would that really make you release your lock to have your arm potentially broken is getting slapped in the face? Like, if I have my hands locked and I'm preventing the arm bar, like, with a slap in the face really make me like, ooh, I got to unlock, protect my face. Bam, you're done.
It's a good question. You never know where a person's brain is at, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes dudes just give their arm up.
Yeah.
There's situations where guys give their arm up, and sometimes guys give their arm up in MMA too. When they're getting pounded on, you'll see guys reach up when someone's in the mount, and you know that they're giving their arm up, and then they get tapped. And I've talked to guys who actually told me that they did it. They just said, "I just let him take my neck, or I let him take my arm."
Right.
But Wagner stopped guys. He's got
a palm technique too.
Exactly.
Like, it's not just like a open-handed. Wow.
Yeah.
He's just kind of going palm to the face. So
he's like I said, he's a real MMA fighter, and he's an elite MMA fighter.
Bro, but does this not look funny to you?
It does look a little funny. It does look a little funny.
I respect these dudes. This dude looks like an absolute monster, but the slapping just reminds me of my sister and I. back in middle school when my mom and dad were at work and we had a snow day.
Yeah.
And we would be fighting over the last sip of the 2-liter Pepsi in the fridge. That was it right there. That's us slapping each other.
If you use gloves, the thing about gloves is if they put the MMA gloves change a lot of positions. Like it's harder to get certain chokes because the gloves are thick and they get in the way. You can't get them under the chin as easy.
Yeah.
But that would probably be the most realistic. But the reason why they use slaps, there's a history that goes back to the original MMA, like when they were first starting to do MMA tournaments.
Yeah.
One of the really early ones was called Pancrase. It was in Japan. And Bas Rutten was the master at Pancrase. And what Bas Rutten would do, he's got crazy flexible hands, and he's an elite striker. So he would pull his hands, like, I don't know how the fuck he does it, but he can get his hands way back.
Pull them back himself,
and he was basically throwing punches. He was basically going boom, boom.
Yeah,
and instead of everybody else was slapping, he was smashing dudes and KOing dudes with palm strikes. See if you can find some Bas Rutten, like Bas Rutten versus Funaki. He KO'd him with an uppercut, a palm strike uppercut.
Palm strike uppercut.
Yeah, because the thing about, see, look at this.
Oh, yeah, that's it. There you go.
Give me a rewind on that so you could see. Is this a Bas Rutten highlight? Yeah. Bas was smashing people over there. But again, he's an elite striker. So he's a guy who came from Holland, and, you know, they're the, like, in the kickboxing world, Holland is like.
So this is
like early 90s.
I'm interested in, like, the apparel here, right? Because it's got, like, a professional wrestling vibe, but it's got
that was a bit of the problem because there was some rigged fights. See, Japan is famous for having rigged fights. They would do weird shit in the early days, in particular. They would do weird shit where, like, you would see, like, I don't want to name names, but some elite fighters were paid off to take dives, and they'll admit it now. Like, you see them, like, literally like pro wrestling. A guy's going for a heel hook and like, oh no,
yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna tap.
Of course,
but you can tell that it's fake. So there was real fights, and then there was also some bullshit. And there was always a question about Pancrase because some of them, like when Bas Rutten's KOing people, well, that's 100% real. Well, that's real. That's real as fuck. He's in pain right there.
Yeah, that was tight.
Yeah.
That hamstring was.
Yeah, he got his knee blown out.
That thing was locked out. You know what's interesting? I feel like, man, that's crazy. I feel like the Japanese love combat.
Yes.
Love combat.
Yeah.
And so that's what makes us excited for the postponed Olympic Games, right? This summer, Tokyo 2021, is wrestling is going to be one of the premier sports because of their love for combat sports there. So whether it's MMA, kickboxing, boxing itself, wrestling, judo, sumo, they love the sport. And so we're really excited about that opportunity this summer.
That's going to be this summer. Are they going to do it with crowds?
That's a good question. I don't know yet. So the Japanese prime minister made an announcement, public statement saying, hey, listen, we're going to host the Olympics this summer no matter what. One of the interesting things about it is although it's happening in 21, they're still calling it Tokyo 2020. Oh, wow. I think they were saving face for all the marketing material that they already made that cost them billions of dollars, right? To change the 0 to a 1. Is that really worth $5 billion or whatever it may have cost them? That's interesting. But it's going to be interesting how they figure it out because the Olympic Village is like a town. There's 10,000 coaches and athletes from every country on the face of the planet, all put into a 1-mile radius on this Olympic campus. And there's just so much interaction, engagement. I'm talking the cafeteria at the Olympic Games is 5 football fields long. They've got a McDonald's, like a full-size McDonald's in the cafeteria in the Olympic Village. They've got foods from all different parts of the country. You've got an Italian station, a Japanese station, American station, and a Pan-African station. It's insane. And you have literally thousands of people swirling in at all times. It's 24 hours. You can go get a Big Mac in
at the McDonald's
apple pie
station
at all times. Bro, like, for if you're coming from America, you can go down the street. There's a McDonald's within, a mile of anybody while you're here stateside. But if you're coming from one of these smaller countries, you're coming from Guinea-Bissau, or you're coming from, I don't know, Qatar, like, you're like, damn, McDonald's sounds pretty good. I don't get this at the crib. Let me go ahead, grab me a little quick couple McChickens, couple double cheeseburgers, put them in the room.
God, but you would think that someone competing in the Olympics would want to fuel their body with the best possible food available.
Some of them know they can't win. Like,
okay.
Like everyone going to the Olympics isn't expecting to win a medal. Like I say 90%, very large percentage of the competitors at the Olympic Games, it's a long shot for them to get on the podium. They're going with the expectation like, hey, listen, I'm representing my home country with pride. I am going to a country that I've never been before. Hopefully I can be on TV. My family will be watching me back home. The opening ceremonies is the best experience for them because they get to be in a full packed arena around all the athletes that they've seen on TV. But they know that realistically they're not going to win. So when that McDonald's is open 24 hours, they're like, let's go, bro. We're going here.
Do they have to pay for it?
Free.
Oh, that's good.
Everything's free.
That's good.
So it's an interesting perspective being in the Olympic Village. It's a cool spot.
It's got to be a wild experience to be there. It must feel surreal.
Wild, it's wild. So they're really strict with the way that they administer athletes and people to get in. You have to have a guest list if you want to bring anyone in. They have to be approved 7 days in advance. So let's say my wife, I'm like, hey, I want my wife to come into the Olympic Village, check out our living space, check out the free McDonald's. Then I have to put her on the list 7 days in advance, and it has to be approved by the USOPC and then also, the IOC.
Wow.
And so it's a very
Brazilian athlete in the 2016
bro, they're not
Olympics.
playing, dog. I'm telling you, Joe. Like they get it.
After
they get
he
it
was
in.
done. After
and he's
done.
like,
oh, after he was done.
Yeah.
Well, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Well,
he's taking
pigging
that
out.
he's taking that home with him. He's putting that all in his suitcase. He's gonna go start him a little McDonald's of his own when he gets back to the crib. But it's so when you get in the village, you have to. It's almost like going through TSA at an airport. You got to show them your badge. They scan it. You got to get all of your bags checked and make sure that you're good to go. You don't have any thing lethal in your bags. You get inside. And it's literally like an apartment complex, huge apartment complex. Look at
Look
the line,
at that.
bro.
McDonald's is the most popular restaurant. That's crazy.
That's
a
and
crazy line.
They're not getting salads and chicken selects.
No.
They're getting
burgers.
cheeseburgers and McChickens and I listen, hey, whatever you need to do to be the fastest man in the world, do your thing.
Well, I guess also, like, when you're done, you probably just want to treat yourself. You've
Yeah,
probably
for sure.
been eating very strict for a long period of time.
Yeah, crazy. That was when I won the gold in 2012, my first meal afterwards was McDonald's. Very first meal.
What'd you have?
I had double cheeseburger with a high C orange to drink and a large fry. So crazy story. I'll tell you the story. So I win the Olympic gold. And right after you win, they take you back to what they have, like a media house. So it's got all of the publications from all over the world. You've got AP, Sports Illustrated, NBC, just pretty much everything. And so you go back and you just bounce from room to room. It's like, okay, we got Al Michaels here. We got Bob Costas here. We got, Joe Rogan here. And so you go, you show your medal, you tell them about your experience, where you're from, who you are, what you're going to do with all this money and fame that you've just won. And then so as soon as you're ushered out of there, you competed at 8 o'clock and you don't get out of there to close to midnight. So by the time it's midnight in London, really the only thing open is McDonald's, right? So I'm still in my podium outfit. Like literally what I wore on the podium, I'm still in it at midnight. And so we go down to like Piccadilly in London. And the only things open is the McDonald's. And so we went to like a club for a little bit. One of my sponsors at the time had like bottle service. They wanted to celebrate me. So we leave there. We go to McDonald's. I get inside and packed. Clubs just let out. Everyone's like hungry. They're hungover. They just got done for the night full of drinking. They're all in line. Line's crazy. I go into the McDonald's. I'm like, damn, it's a long day. I wrestled all day long. I do not want to stand in line. I just want to see if I can work my way to the front. So I go and ask the guy. I'm like, yo, bro, listen, I just wrestled all day at the Excel Center. I just won an Olympic gold. Like, you think I can get in front of you? And he's like, you didn't win an Olympic. What? Stop. And I'm like, bro, I won the Olympics. He's like, no, you didn't. And so I had my medal in my pocket. I had my gold medal in my pocket. So I pulled my gold medal out and showed this guy. He's like, starts going nuts. Oh my God, this guy. So he's yelling. He's pushing people out of the way in this McDonald's. He's like, this guy just won an Olympic gold medal. Let him to the front of the line. Let him to the front of the line. And so he's pushing people out of the way, gets me, like literally escorts me to the front of the line to get me my quarter pounder and my large fry. It was wild.
That's the craziest
but
cheeseburger fry story ever.
Cool. It was dope. It was awesome.
That had to be very memorable.
Yeah, it was fun.
Wow.
Man. It was fun.
Winning the gold medal. I know you've won the world championship, 4 times?
4 worlds, 1 Olympics.
But how much difference?
Nothing like it. Olympics are the best. It's rare. It only happens every 4 years. It's a single day event, so you have to be your best on that single day. You only get 1 cycle to prepare for. So we think of our careers like cyclically, where like if you're an MMA fighter, you're like, okay, I can get an opportunity to fight for the belt as long as I continue to compete at a high level, like keep my brand awareness at a good place. But in wrestling, the pinnacle is the Olympic Games. So no matter how many world championships you win, you want that Olympic gold. And the crazy thing is the worlds are harder than the Olympics. So the Olympics are a little more condensed in terms of the qualification process. So at Worlds, it's much easier to qualify. So you have 42 guys in your weight class or in your bracket at Worlds. You only have 16 at the Olympics. So in the World Championships, I won in 2015. I wrestled 6 matches. The Olympics I won in 2012. I only had 4 matches. And it's a random draw too. So you could wrestle Russia first round, which would suck, or you could wrestle Puerto Rico first round, which would suck less. And so it's a really interesting experience the way these brackets are drawn. And I think that the Olympic Games has become so special because of everything surrounding it. You get more money, more notoriety, more recognition moving forward. Like winning the gold in 2012 catapulted me to where I am right now. Like when I'm recognized or announced at an event, it's always affiliated with that Olympic gold. Olympic gold medalist Jordan Burroughs. Like they always tell you, whenever you step off the podium, you will forever be an Olympic gold medalist. You can't lose that. You can lose your belt.
Right.
You can never lose your gold.
Right.
It always comes home with me at the end of the day, no matter what I do moving forward. So that's pretty cool.
That is an interesting perspective, right? Because if you're a fighter, you win the title, and then you lose the title in your next fight, you're a former world champion.
Former world champion.
But an Olympic gold medalist from 2012 is an Olympic
before
gold
it.
medalist.
They just say Olympic.
Yeah,
it's dope.
Yeah, you made it through, you did it, and that's it.
But then there's another guy who does it 4 years later.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
It's got to be a crazy experience, but the World Championships being more difficult. Is the World Championships held in a 2-day? Is it a 2-day event?
Yeah, so they changed the format in 2018. Wrestling used to be a single day. You weigh in the day before, and then you'd wrestle all day. You start in the preliminaries, and then you wrestle all the way through to the finals. By the end of the day, 5-6 matches, you knew if you were a world champion, Olympic champion or not. Now they've made a transition where you weigh in same day. Competition starts 2 hours after weigh-ins, and then it's a 2-day event. You wrestle through the semifinals, and then finals and medal matches are the second day.
Now, if you weigh in the same day, do you cut any weight?
A ton. I wrestle at 74 kilos or 163, and this morning I weigh 183, right? So that kind of gives you perspective as to where we are in terms of what my walking around weight is when I'm just chilling and getting ready for competition, or if I'm actually wrestling at my competition weight.
So when you were supposed to be wrestling in town, this wrestling match,
I'm going up a weight class.
What would that be?
That is 189, which I can't even get to.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm too. So I'm wrestling the guy that I'm wrestling is David Taylor. Wrestled at Penn State. He is a 2-time NCAA champion, world champion at the weight class above me, 86 kilos or 189 pounds in 2018. So I'm the world champ at 163. He's the world champ at 189. And
that's a big gap.
It's a big gap. And so there are only 6 Olympic weights at the Olympic game. Only 6, right?
That's
so
crazy.
You've got 57 kilos or like 120. So you got 125, 143, 163, 189, 213, and then heavyweight. And so only 6 weight classes. And then in the World Championship year, you have 10 weights. So they give you a little more flexibility. But in the Olympic Games, they try to condense them. They're adding so many sports every single cycle. You got golf and they're adding breakdancing to the Olympic Games in Paris 2024.
That's pretty crazy. But if they have rhythmic gymnastics, I don't see why they shouldn't have breakdancing.
But at the expense of other sports like wrestling, where you only have 6 weights
and
a single athlete or a single representative from each country per weight class.
Do me a favor. Go to Stance Elements on Instagram. I want to show you this dude that I just saw there yesterday. This is
breakdancing.
Dude.
Is he sick?
They're on another level.
It's pretty dope, bro.
It's like elite gymnasts now.
I'm just a hater because it has kind of affected wrestling a little bit.
It shouldn't affect wrestling. But I do agree with it. Not this gentleman. There's a guy in a red sweatsuit, so you can find him down there.
There he is.
That's it. Watch this guy. I mean, watch this. This dude is crazy.
Damn.
Look at this. I mean, he might as well be an elite gymnast. I mean, the way he's doing those back handsprings and shit. I mean, this guy's incredible. Look at this shit.
Ooh.
Look at that. On one hand. I mean, he's incredible. And then stopping perfect all to music.
Bro, like,
what is this dude's name, Jamie?
That's the one thing I can't deny.
You're
like B-Boy Tata.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's nice with it.
B-Boy Tata.
Yo, and looks like he's from Jersey. Shout out to B-Boy Tata.
Oh, that's right. You're from Camden, right?
Yeah, so I grew up South Jersey, Sicklerville, New Jersey, right outside of Philly. My hometown's 20 miles from Philadelphia. That's nuts, bro. Look at that.
I have some friends that started out in breakdancing and then got into jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
My friend Richie Martinez and his brother Gio.
They probably transition well.
Amazingly well. They're so fucking strong and so athletic. They can move so well.
Yeah.
It's like gymnasts. Like gymnasts do well transitioning to jiu-jitsu as well.
I guess if you have that perspective, right, it's very similar to rhythmic gymnastics. Just a lot more.
There's some goofy shit in the Olympics,
stylish.
Man. But you can't get rid of wrestling. Wrestling is one of the original sports. It's literally one of the original Olympic sports.
And that's what I love about wrestling. And this here's been like my comparison to MMA for a long time. Is I'm always weighing the pros and cons. Okay, wrestling is here, MMA is here. MMA has so many amazing things. I love the toughness aspect. My favorite sport outside of wrestling is boxing. I'm a big boxing fan. I love just the warrior element. I love how you come from the gutter, from the mud, and these dudes are just like gritty warriors, precision. It's an art form. I look at MMA as an alternative to wrestling, right? And one of the things that I've seen so many guys that I've trained alongside that have gone on to have immense success in MMA. So that's what always kind of pulls me. I'm like, damn.
Like what guys?
I've trained with. Been alongside Daniel. I've been alongside Marty or Kamaru Usman. I've been alongside Henry Cejudo. I've wrestled Justin Gaethje on numerous occasions. Mike Chandler, Lance Palmer, like all these guys. I've wrestled these guys, and I've seen. But it's different, right? Just because you're a great wrestler doesn't mean you're going to be a great fighter, and just because you're an average wrestler doesn't mean you're going to be an average fighter. I've seen guys who I thought were average wrestlers become great fighters, and guys who I thought were tremendous wrestler can't fight their way out of a wet paper bag.
So some guys
it's interesting.
Adapt quickly to the striking aspects, and some guys really struggle. There's some really strong grapplers that for whatever reason, they have terrible hand speed. Their hand speed's terrible. They don't have any power. It's very strange.
Yeah.
Power's a weird thing. Like you either have it or you don't.
And one of the interesting things that I think about the transition is like in wrestling, if you're a righty, usually you lead right leg.
Yeah.
But in fighting, right, if you're a righty, you're going to lead left.
That's true, but in boxing, they're actually training a lot of people opposite now.
Really?
Yeah, like Oscar De La Hoya. He fought southpaw, but he's a right-handed fighter.
Huh.
And there's a few, or was it opposite? Yeah, I think he was a left-handed fighter, and he fought orthodox. Did De La Hoya fight southpaw or orthodox? I can't even remember now. But he let, like Emmanuel Stewart started having guys do that. Because the idea would be one of the most important punches in boxing is your jab. And you should use the most dominant hand for jabs. So there's a few fighters.
Right. And so
He's a converted southpaw. That's right. So he was a left-handed fighter, and they had him use his left hand forward, and that way his power hand was his most dominant hand, which was his front hand.
40 jabs around. Yeah. It's a lot of work.
Well, it's the most important punch in boxing. And so there's a lot, like Bruce Lee believed in that as well.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of people that think that maybe if a wrestler does fight that way with that right leg forward, or wrestle that way rather, they should fight that way as well.
Yeah, and I think the transition would be different. There'd be a lot to learn, and that's part of the reason. I mean, there's so many reasons amongst others, but I'm the best in my field at wrestling. I'm one of the best wrestlers in the world. It is a completely different transition and learning curve to getting to MMA, right? You got to start from the bottom. So you go from this heralded space where you're a legend, an icon, to just another guy. And yes, you have the pedigree. You've got the chops to go on and, kind of excel here, but it takes time, bro.
Well, you have the most important skill set,
That's
in my
true.
opinion. Most
but
important skill set
it took
is wrestling.
Henry a decade, bro.
It did, but
I don't have that type of time. I'm 30. I'm 32.
Himself the same way in the beginning.
Yeah.
Henry turned a corner somewhere in the UFC.
Well, he wasn't seeing the fruit. Like it's hard to turn the corner when you don't see the fruit. When you
Yes.
start to see celebrities sitting ringside, you got Holly Berry here, Matt McConaughey here, and then you see those payouts. You're like, damn, let me get my stuff together. Let me get right.
Well, he also got really good at marketing and talking shit.
Yeah,
and
the cringe king.
But
No,
also
I respect Henry. He's a good dude.
undeniably good as a fighter. And so when the last half of his career, when he became like super dedicated, I mean, he was crushing people, crushing people with stand up.
Do you think he's done?
I don't think
he'll be
so.
back.
I think he's
looking
so
for the right
competitive.
payday, right?
And how old is he now? 33,
Yeah,
32?
yeah, he's still young.
How old is Henry Cejudo?
I think 33.
34.
Okay.
So he's still got years ahead of him in his prime, his athletic prime. And I think he's just a guy like that who's a conqueror. He's just so good.
Let me ask you this. Why do you think that MMA fighters have a much later prime than pretty much any other sport? If you look at the champions in MMA, it's very hard to find someone below the age of 30. Why is that
I think it's hard to put everything together. Because if you're a specialist in one aspect of MMA, someone generally, the person that's going to figure out a way to beat you is a person who's a specialist in the thing you're not good at. Like, say, if you're a wrestler and you're really good at wrestling, and then you'll come into you come into a fight with a guy who's a really good striker who's got excellent takedown defense, and then you're kind of fucked. Like, that happened when Brock Lesnar fought Alistair Overeem. Because Brock Lesnar couldn't get Alistair down, and Alistair is a K1 Grand Prix champion and just a fucking beast, and then also an enormous man too.
Of course.
And Brock couldn't get him down, and he was just getting torn apart standing up.
Yeah.
So that was the guy who solved his puzzle. It was a guy who was much bigger, or as big as him, but a much better striker.
What's interesting, because I think that's why wrestlers translate well, is because I started wrestling at 6 years old. Most guys start the sport of wrestling from infancy.
Yeah.
Like if it's in your bloodline, you're on the mat 3, 4, 5 years old.
Right.
Where a lot of other sports, you're not doing that, right? Whether it's judo, jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, boxing, like you don't do that for the entirety of your life. Maybe 8, 9, 10, you start to dabble in a little bit. And I think wrestling is, I'm sure wrestling is the only sanctioned sport collegiately of all combat sports. So we have a very high level of pedigree in comparison to other places.
Yeah.
So, I started wrestling at 6 years old, wrestled through middle school, high school, went to the University of Nebraska, earned my degree there, training twice a day for 5 years, took the medical red shirt to get better, and then got to this place where I started to continue to sharpen my chops at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. So if I made that transition, I would be so regimented in what I had done for such a long period of time. I don't think that any other sport can compare with that. And I don't really follow a ton, so I don't really know the dynamics of what it's like on a scholastic level in, let's say, jiu-jitsu. But I have to imagine that wrestling has the strongest pedigree and the highest level of preparation for MMA because of its ability to, be popular within the contents of an actual school, university, that type of thing.
For sure. And wrestlers that dedicate themselves to jiu-jitsu transition very easily. Like wrestlers that figure out chokeholds and arm bars and stuff like that, they already know how to control bodies. And
Keep
they already know how to drill.
Protect your neck.
Yeah. And they already have discipline, like crazy discipline. One of the things that I think separates wrestlers from other sports is mental toughness.
That's right.
Because it is a badge of courage. There's a thing that wrestlers all have is they embrace the suck. They all do. They all know how to push. There's no prima donnas that are successful wrestlers.
Sure.
They don't exist. I mean, you could say that about other sports. There's prima donnas in basketball. There's guys that, they'll fake injuries in other sports. In soccer, they fall down. That shit is never going to happen in wrestling.
Well, because it's free.
Yeah.
And it's not sexy. You don't make any money.
Exactly.
So we've done it for nothing for so long that when you get to this level, it's just all about pride.
Yeah, I mean, it's not saying there's no mentally tough people in soccer. I'm sure there are.
Of course.
But
But there's no flopping in wrestling.
There's no one in wrestling that's successful that's not mentally tough.
Yeah.
It is like it's a universal standard.
Yeah.
And when they transition rather to MMA, you see it immediately. You see it in the training room. You see it in the way they fight. Yeah, on the scale you see it. They know how to cut that weight. I wanted to ask you about that too. Like when you're cutting weight for something or like a world championships and you have to compete 2 hours later, how do you do that?
You got to be dialed in for a long period of time. So I've dabbled in a lot of diets, right? I see you're on the carnivore diet.
Yeah.
Like, how is that going, actually? It's
great.
Is it good?
The last time I did it last year. Only meat. Yeah, only meat.
Only meat.
Well, I eat eggs and fish. Like last time I had lobster. Only animal products. Yeah.
So eggs, any type of meat.
Yeah, any type of meat. Yeah.
No, that's it.
No vegetables.
No carbs, no veggies, nothing.
Some people eat like a little piece of fruit here and there.
Yeah.
You know, if you really feel like you need it.
That's insane.
Before a workout, but I'm telling you, man, it's crazy.
You feel good?
You feel fucking great. Your energy level with no carbs is like this. It's flat all day. It stays the same.
It's essentially sugar-free.
Yes, exactly.
So
Sugar-free.
that's why your energy, you don't have those crashes.
No insulin crash, no weirdness.
Bro, your belly's got to be feeling awful.
No.
How are you digesting
I'm telling
all
you
of this stuff? I feel
it's
like
easy.
I'd be like bogged down. Like, I couldn't train.
No, I'm telling you, it's pretty easy. It seems like it wouldn't be, but it really is. It's just
That's
like
crazy.
Rafael dos Anjos, I think, went on this kind of a diet for his last fight when he fought Paul Felder. And I think that's how he wound up making 155 again. But some guys have tried it in MMA. I know it's similar to like a ketogenic diet. A lot of ketogenic diets, guys are mostly eating meats and fats and getting their fuel from fat or from glucogenesis, gluconeogenesis, which is like when your body, I think that's how you say it, when your body processes protein and turns that protein into glucose. Your body can do that. But the thing about it is like there's no crashing after eating. It's real interesting.
And I think that's I try to eliminate sugar. That's number one. I always try to eliminate sugar because I like sweets. I'm a sweets guy.
Who doesn't?
Right. So I want the pastries and I love bread. Right. So those are the first things I cut out. I cut out all the extras, number one. So any sort of, let's say, juice, bread, potato chips, cereal. Cereal is like my thing, right? Late at night, 9 o'clock before I go to bed.
What is it?
Now or when I was like growing
if you want to go off the rails.
Now I just do granola. Like I'm
Really?
a granola guy. Yeah.
Okay.
When I was a kid, right, it was Fruity Pebbles and Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
I'm a Captain Crunch guy.
You're a Captain Crunch. Bro, I want to see the roof of your mouth if you're a Captain Crunch guy. Because listen, bro, it's like chewing on straight up fiberglass, bro. Like, come on, man. You might as well smash up this mug and throw it in a bowl, pour some milk on it.
That's hilarious.
So it's I dabbled in Captain Crunch a little bit when I was a kid. All berries. You ever had a Oops All Berries?
I don't think I did. No.
Listen, you ain't lived until you had the Oops All Berries. So none of the little yellow boys, whatever those are.
What was the
only
peanut
berries.
butter one? There was a peanut butter breakfast cereal. I'm trying to remember what that was.
I don't know.
Fruit Loops was always a good one
Fruit
too.
Loops. Can't go wrong. Lucky Charms.
Yeah, can't go wrong.
If I'm gonna go completely off the rails, I had some friends of ours who live actually in Texas and Dallas. The Ribman family, they sent me, after I made the world team last year, a huge box of all the little tiny cereals. And it had Apple Jacks, Fruit Loops, Frosted Flakes,
Cocoa
Fruity
Pops?
Pebbles, Cocoa, everything. Like literally everything that you ate as a kid. And so we only do our shopping at Whole Foods now. So we have a pretty much organic, all-natural diet. So that's why I'm kind of into, the Kashi. Like as far as we go now is like Honey Nut Cheerios. That's like as far as we'll.
That's a big
we'll
splurge.
So
that's going crazy.
That's a splurge, right? Like, damn, you getting wild tonight. JV's going with the Honey Nut
Going
Cheerios.
off the rails.
So I try to cut out the bad stuff first, and then it really is about portion sizing. So I dabble in intermittent fasting. I cut down the portion sizes of my meals and I go sugar-free. So typically I wake up in the morning, let's say 7 a.m. I have a smoothie. In my smoothie, I put plant protein, collagen protein. I'll do maybe like some chia seeds, almond milk, spinach, and peanut butter. And that'll be my breakfast.
And this is pre-training.
That's pre-training.
So you do this at 7, and what time's your first training session?
And my first training session is at 8:30.
And how many training sessions do you generally have in a day?
2. Just 2.
And how do you break them up? What do you choose how you train and what you do?
It depends. Now, yes, a little bit more so than I had in the past. So at this age, I'm 32 years old. I've been in it for a while. I have a connection with my coaches that is more of a partnership, as opposed to like a coach-athlete relationship. So I'm like, okay, here's what I need. Here's what I want to work on. And then they give me kind of the autonomy to figure out what my schedule is going to look like because I've got 3 kids at home, a wife. So my schedule is a little more busy than the average college guy that we're training with. So I still train at the University of Nebraska. We have an RTC there, which is a regional training center, in conjunction with the college program. So I'm wrestling with those guys often in their room out in Lincoln. But yeah, so I have my smoothie at usually like 7:30. I'm in the wrestling room by 8:30 to train. We're usually on the mat in the morning, so we'll get like a light drill in, just get our bodies moving, get feeling good, or we'll lift in the morning. So I typically lift 3 times a week. Then in the afternoon, I'll have, depending upon how close I am to my weight cut itself, like if I'm trying to stay light and I'm getting close, like week of, I'll skip lunch, period. I won't even have lunch. Or I'll do like a handful of cashews or something relatively small. And then I'll go back to practice at 2 and we'll do either live wrestling or we'll do some sort of conditioning. And
now, is that hard to do with just like a handful of cashews?
It sucks, bro. But you have to shrink your body a little bit because if you want to compete 2 hours, like unlike boxing and MMA where you have an entire day to rehydrate, replenish your body and get ready for competition, 2 hours is a different beast, bro. Like if you step on the scale and you just sat in the sauna for an hour and you've been in a hot tub with a sauna suit and a beanie, you're finished. You're finished. You can't recover. It's impossible because if you think about that 2 hours encompasses multiple things. It's one, it's you have to eat. Then 2, you've got to get warmed up. And then 3, you got to get your mind right and prepare to compete. So you never know. You could be an hour in or you could be the first match on Mat A. It really just depends on how the brackets shake out.
So you're shrinking your body no matter what.
No matter what, you have to. Or at least that's what I feel. So the most I ever want to lose in the day, the 24 hours before competition is 6 pounds, 7 pounds.
So that's doable for you.
That's doable. That's manageable.
And then so when you get off the scale, what's the first thing you take into your body?
Liquids, yeah.
Do you do with electrolytes?
Yeah, electrolytes. Aminos, liquid aminos. I'll do.
And is there like a protocol? Do you do it slowly? Like how do you get rehydrated?
I don't do it slowly. I mean, I don't slam it, but I think I do it with moderation because my weight cut is not really hard because I don't do 15, 20 pounds.
Right.
So it's not like my body is so shocked that any input nutritionally is going to
it's
throw
mild
me off.
Dehydration.
So it's relatively mild. Because I still want to be able to recover.
You've got your electrolytes and your fluids, and then fruits. What do you?
Fruit. So like I try to slam. Then I try to re-energize with all the carbs and the sugars that I've kind of pulled back from. Because you get time. The tournament is going to last throughout an entire day. So let's say you wrestle 2 hours later, but then your next match isn't going to be for another hour and a half. And then the same thing for your next match, and then the semifinals. So between each match, you're going to have about an hour. So you know that the longer the day goes, the more you win, the more recovery time you get. So where you might start the day I weigh in at 163, and then by the time I compete my first match, let's say I'm 169-ish, 170, drank maybe a gallon of water, had a smoothie, ate some fruit, maybe some honey and some peanut butter, and then I'm wrestling about 6-7 pounds over. And so then as the day progresses, you're eating a little bit between each match. But then you also have to remember, you've got to make scratch weight again for day 2.
Oh, my God.
Day 2. So you got to be back down to 163.0 for day 2 of the finals.
Oh, no.
But that's a different beast because then the finals are in the evening. So if you can just make it down, weigh in at 8:30, you don't have to wrestle until 6 p.m.
But that's got to beat you up to do that
Sucks,
2 days
bro.
in a row.
So when you step off the mat after the semifinals, you wrestled 4 matches that day. And then you go step on the scale. So, like, for example, this year World Championships, made weight Saturday morning, wrestled 4 matches. After the semifinals, you're like, okay, I got to make weight tomorrow since I'm a medalist. You go step on the scale. I'm 7 pounds over. So now I got to get ready for tomorrow. I can't eat dinner after wrestling 4 matches.
Oh.
I've got to go straight to the gym, get on the bike, get in the sauna, get on the treadmill, get this 7 pounds off, and then go to sleep hungry and then weigh in again the next morning. So
no.
It's rough. I hope wrestling will change it.
So if you do that, say, and then you don't have to wrestle until the evening. You weigh in the morning, you don't have to wrestle until the evening. Then what do? Do you immediately start eating? It is the same thing?
Yeah,
Fluids first?
Yeah, you do some fluids first. You do relatively similar protocol to the day before, but then you train at some point during the day. Like, if I have a match at night, I always like to get my body moving at some point during the day. So maybe I'll have breakfast, and then around noon, 1 o'clock, I'll come and get a light drill in. Just get my body moving, taking a couple shots, maybe do a couple sprints, ride the bike for a little bit, just to make sure that I'm on point when it is go time, that I'm not just sitting around all day accumulating all this weight. Now all of a sudden I'm 10, 12 pounds heavier than I was 8 hours ago, and I got to be ready to go out and compete. So
I can't believe you have to
There's
wrestle.
a balance. There's a balance there. I don't know how the guys do it in MMA, bro. Like, you're 15, 20 pounds heavier than you were the day before.
Yeah.
How can you even be ideal in terms of your movement? Like, I feel like I'd be way down.
Well, I mean, I feel like there's guys that are getting away from that now, and a lot of guys are trying to just do what you were just saying, get to about 6 pounds and cut that, and then it's the day before, and they perform better that way.
Yeah.
But the real concern is against elite grapplers, like someone who's really bigger than you and stronger than you and to take you down. But I'm just thinking, I can't believe that you have to wrestle all those matches in a day and then train afterwards to cut weight that night.
You got to cut again.
And then don't eat.
So if the UFC has a tournament and McGregor's wrestling Cerrone on Saturday night, and then or fighting Cerrone Saturday night, and then he's got to fight Gaethje Sunday. He's gonna make weight on Saturday morning before the fight, and he's gonna make weight again on Sunday before the fight, because you got to rehydrate. Like, you got to, when you're not thinking about weigh-ins tomorrow, you're thinking about the day.
Why do they make them weigh in twice?
Because they want to stop guys from cutting too much weight. Like, you've seen it. Guys have almost died.
Yeah.
Trying to get down the weight, like crazy stuff. You had day before weigh-ins, people are like, I can cut anything because I can be ready in 24 hours.
Right.
So you got guys literally getting carried to the scale.
Oh, I've seen it. Yeah.
They can't even walk. They're discombobulated. They're all over the place. Their coaches carry them, sit them on the scale, make weight, and then all of a sudden they just lay them out. They're pouring fluids into their mouth, chewing their food for them. It's nuts.
It's nuts. They're on death's door.
I think that's what they're trying to avoid. They don't want to be liable for someone killing themselves while trying to make weight for an event.
Well, there's an MMA organization called ONE FC in Asia that they're trying to avoid that, and they're doing hydration tests. I'm not exactly sure how they do it.
I don't like that.
You don't like that?
I don't.
How come?
Because there is a certain level of accountability that you have to provide for your athletes, but some weight classes are impossible. Like, there are only 6 weight classes in what I do in wrestling. So the next weight class above me is 189. I'm at 163, so that's a 26-pound jump. The weight class below me is 143. That's a 20-pound drop. So I'm a tweener. I can't go up. I'm too small. I can't go down. I'm too big.
Right.
So the only weight class I can make is 163. So now, not only are you trying to beat the scale and beat your opponent, but now you're also trying to beat the hydration test. It's just another way for people to cheat, and then, potentially suspensions. And
what they're doing fighting has a couple more weight classes, but it's still pretty limited. But what they're doing is they're just telling guys, like, if you fight at 170 and you're cutting 10, 15 pounds, just go up to 185.
Yeah.
And they're making sure that these guys fight and compete healthy. So they're trying to eliminate weight cutting.
Is that possible, though? Like,
it's
if
hard.
you tell someone, hey, listen, I know this is a struggle for you, Joe. I know you really want to fight at 170. Your BMI says that you can, but you cannot get hydrated and fight at 170. You've got to go up to 185. And you weigh 185. And you're like, I can't compete here.
But the other guys would be 185 as well. They'll be doing the same thing as well. The whole idea is to eliminate weight cutting across the board.
But some guys have better teams. Some guys have science behind them. Like,
that's true.
You look at Conor. Like, now that Conor's made this insane amount of money, he's got an entire team behind what he does.
Yeah.
And so most guys that are trying to compete with him don't have those type of resources. So where he has science and they're going to make sure he's on point, you're just you got your water bottle and you're just drinking as much as possible and trying to manage it.
But if you're not cutting weight, that would kind of eliminate the significance of having this big team behind you. In terms of, like, the science of weight cutting and preparing, getting yourself ready. If no one's cutting weight, then you're just dealing with skill. That's the idea.
Yeah, but that would be like the whole steroids argument. If everyone's on steroids, then no one's on steroids, right? So it's like,
no, it's the opposite.
That possible?
It's the opposite of that argument. That would be the argument for weight cutting, saying, look, everyone's on steroids, so just take steroids. Everyone cuts weight, so just cut weight.
Yeah, but
if
they're
you
still trying to
can't cut weight, That's like saying you can't do steroids.
Yeah, I got you.
So it's like the opposite of that argument.
So, but I'm curious as to how you would prevent everyone from doing that.
Hydration tests.
I know, but there's certain ways. Not everyone's not going to cheat, right? Like,
well,
I'm just saying there's certain.
Get a guy, you'd measure his body mass, measure his body fat composition, do a hydration test on him, say, look, at 170, you're sitting here, you have 10% body fat. Yeah, and then just have your body weight and your mass tracked. So like you're capable of competing at 170 pounds, and this is how we know. You really can't make 155, and that's the weight classes in MMA, 155 to 170.
I think the tough thing for us is we have eating disorders. Like combat athletes have eating disorders, bro.
Yeah.
And it's, for us, we have an unhealthy relationship with food where we kill ourselves to get down to weight so we can compete at a high level, and then we trash our bodies with all the things that we've been missing out on for such a long period of time. So if you look at the average fighter, where they are in the off season is much higher than where they typically are when they're training. If you look at a guy with his shirt off when he's getting prepared for a fight, you're like, damn, that dude looks good. You look at him on a beach with his family in the summertime, you're like, damn, that dude looks fat. And so we have to have a better relationship with food where it's more of a lifestyle, because at this point, this is why you see most guys after their careers are done, they've gained an excessive amount of weight. They look unhealthy. Yeah, and you're like, bro, what did you do to yourself?
That's true. It's a good point.
I feel it personally. There are days where I'm like, I'm not even hungry, but I haven't eaten what I wanted in 2 months. I'm having this French toast. You know what I mean? And so it's a very, very different aspect of life that we have never really tapped into because we've been able to make it. But just because you're making it doesn't mean it's healthy. So, it's almost like one of those things that until we start to register it and track it over a long period of time, we'll never really know the effects mentally, psychologically, and physically.
Well, I think for MMA, one of the solutions is more weight classes, because I don't think there's nearly enough weight classes. I think the jumps like 85 to 205, that's 20 pounds. That's a giant jump. And then 205 to 265 is heavyweight. That's too big. That's a giant jump.
That's a big jump.
I think they should have weight classes basically every 10 pounds.
I think that'd be good. That might get me interested. Because
I'm
a 160. I wrestle at 163.
Right.
So I'm literally smack dab in between two weight classes.
Yeah. Between
55 and 70, then you have me. So I feel like I'm too big for 55.
So you're still considering this?
My wife's watching, so I'll tell you later. When they cut the cameras off, I'll tell you.
How much training have you done, like with striking?
Never.
Never
Really? Even been in a fight.
But never hit pads or anything?
Nothing.
Whoa.
Nothing.
Wow. That's.
But I think I'm just confident.
Well, you should be. You're one of the best wrestlers ever.
Absurdly confident.
So you're a fucking Olympic gold medalist. You have to be confident. But striking is a different animal.
I just want to roll with a couple of guys.
Well, that would be easy to set up.
Yeah, I want to roll with Connor. Is probably my dream guy that just like get my hands on and just feel a little bit. I think it would be fun. GSP. What
was it like doing that thing with Askren? That you guys did that
it was interesting,
crazy wrestling match?
It was interesting. I respect Ben a ton. He's
I do too. Try this. You ever have a Kill Cliff?
No, it's good.
CBD. It's my own drink.
Oh, I can't drink this, bro.
You can't? Bad for you?
No, I'm USADA.
This is CBD. It doesn't have any THC in it.
I'm good.
I understand.
But thank you. I appreciate it. Hey, make sure you guys are drinking Kill Cliff.
Drink whatever you want. I don't give a fuck. I just wanted you to try it.
No, you're good, bro.
Pineapple and jalapeno.
This looks good. Kill Cliff. You're with Kill Cliff?
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. They sent me like a package of their stuff years ago. Were you in their inception?
Nope.
Or did you just get recently on board?
Within the last year or so.
That's dope, bro. Congratulations.
Yeah,
man.
we started. I came up with this idea for a pineapple jalapeno drink.
They're growing.
Yeah,
it's
great. It's all sugar
they were a
free.
relatively small company.
It's got 25 milligrams of CBD in it.
Are they still in like the CrossFit space?
Yeah, they do a lot of different stuff like that. Yeah,
that's awesome, bro. So at Wrestling Askren, it was when I was in college in 2008. He was on the Olympic team going to Beijing. I was on the junior world team. I was 20 years old at the time. He was on the Olympian. So I'm like, damn, like that's Ben Askren. Like, yo, look who it is. And so super cool for me to kind of have that experience. I remember he took me for a ride to Walmart in his Prius. and he let me sit shotgun. And so like from that day on, I like idolized him. And then, you know, you get to this point where idols become rivals, and I'm like, well, this guy is doing extremely well in the MMA world. He's a former wrestler, but he still has his hand in wrestling, and he's still a competitor. So, you know, for him, he's like, why not? I'm going to do my best to elevate wrestling's profile. But I knew I could beat him. So, you know, it wasn't really like a risky matchup for me. But it was a lot of fun, bro. We drew a ton of fans. We sold out the Hulu Theater in Times Square. This place was rocking, bro. Like crazy arena. And it was a ton of fun. It was a ton of fun.
It's interesting that, like, for someone to compete in MMA, you have to do so many different things. You have to strike, you have to do jiu-jitsu, you have to work on all these different aspects that you know, you're wrestling. You're just wrestling. That's what you do. You're an expert at it.
Yeah.
With Ben, he was really elite at it, but at a certain period, oh shit. Now
there goes Ben.
He's got a fucked up hip too, and I'm sure he still had a fucked up hip.
He was all smiles though. Listen, he was like,
he loved it.
There was one point later in the match where I took him down, and he was like, bro, I thought you said you were going to let me score or like actually give me a chance. I was like, nah, I'm not the guy. Listen, if you want to build your confidence, or if you want to like get prepared for an event by, you know, letting someone throw you a bone, I'm not that guy. But it was fun. You know what? I love Ben for allowing me to compete in this match. You know what's crazy is this was my most viewed match in my entire career.
Wow.
Wrestling Ben Askren, who hadn't wrestled competitively in almost a decade.
It's pretty wild.
Wild.
He's an interesting guy in MMA too, because it's a bummer that he made it to the UFC when he did, because he had really taken a long time off the sport and decided to come back and fight in the UFC. And I just don't think he was the same Ben Askren that was the Bellator champion, or when he went over to ONE FC.
Yeah,
he was manhandling motherfuckers. And the best part about it is you got to see a guy who is elite at wrestling and really not elite at anything else.
Yeah,
just dominating with pure wrestling.
He's a great wrestler.
He's a great wrestler.
Great wrestler, and he's one of those guys. If he gets attached to you, he's dangerous.
Yeah.
Right, if you get your head underneath of him, front headlock position, you forget about it.
He's ridiculously strong, despite what he looks like.
Deceptively strong, right?
Yeah.
Shaped like a pear, wrestle like a bear.
That's a good way to describe it.
So he's man, he's got the ultimate dad bod. But I tell you what, you don't want to let that dude in on your leg.
For years, but when he was undefeated before he went and fought in the UFC, for years, he would get a hold of guys. You could see this surprised look in their face, like they were confused.
Yeah.
When he fought like Koreshkov and when he fought Douglas Lima, these fucking murderers over in Bellator, those guys were killing people, but he just got a hold of them like, not today. Boom, on your back.
Yeah.
Take these noogies.
Yeah, it was wild because, and maybe it worked out perfectly for him because he got to establish himself here. Mm-hmm. In these lesser leagues, and then made the transition at a good time where, you know, he was knocking on Dana White's door for so long that it almost became comical. It's like, you got to let this guy in here.
True. I just wish that we could have seen him when he was in his athletic prime compete against the guys that he competed against, like guys like Robbie Lawler and guys like, you know, Masvidal.
He was a guy that he had dwelled here for so long that when he finally got to UFC, they gave him such elite a competition that he never really had a chance to even get his feet wet in the UFC. It was like, all right, Lawler.
Well, that's what the UFC does. Well, he won that fight.
Here you go.
But the Masvidal fight was crazy.
Yeah, but Lawler fight was crazy too, bro. Like that first 45 seconds, it was not looking good for him.
I know, he got hit with some big shots. It was a crazy fight.
But it was, you know, Ben has made a lot of money. And he's done very well for himself, and he's still well respected in both spaces. So, I mean, I really guess that's all you can ask for from his perspective. He's done extremely well. He has multiple wrestling clubs back up in Wisconsin. He works for Flow Wrestling down here in Austin, who he, you know, dabbles in commentary and as an analyst for our sport. He's well respected in the MMA community. He's been a champion in ONE FC and Bellator, and, you know, fought in the UFC. Like, He's done well, and
he's also he's a fun guy. He takes a lot. He took that loss against Masvidal better than anybody. Like, immediately gets on Twitter. Well, that sucked,
bro. I was scared.
It was.
I was legit scared. We were at Buffalo Wild Wings watching that fight,
Yeah.
And we were sitting down like, all right, let's go, Ben, because it was only a couple weeks after I had wrestled him, so I wanted to see him win. Of
course,
I just wanted to see him win. Because I was affiliated with him, so I always want to see the wrestlers win. But it was
kind of crazy that he took a wrestling match a couple of weeks before a big MMA
fight. I threw him off the stage. That was a bad idea. I'm an idiot, bro. Like, I would almost cost this man a lot of money just because I was being stupid.
Yeah.
So it was we're good.
Well, it worked out okay.
Yeah. He survived.
But the shot that Masvidal landed on him was horrific,
and that's why. Yeah. I still wrestle.
Yeah. Well, if you've done no striking at all, I think you've made a good choice.
Yeah, bro. It's different. And I think, it's funny. I took a shot the other day in practice right into someone's knee. Bam. And I was like, maybe that's what a punch feels like. And I'm like, if I can take that shot from a knee to the face, shooting at full speed, I can take a punch. I can take a punch. I don't know. Sure. Maybe it's just a little ego. Right? Is there like a little ego where I'm like, I want to see what I'm made of. I've never fought. I know I'm tough. I'm gritty. I'm mentally tough. I can do this. But again, like, I don't feel like I have anything to prove. I've got to kind of step back into like this spiritual sense of contentment. Like, I've done plenty. God has me where he wants me. And I've done so much to elevate the profile of the sport of wrestling. I don't have to make this transition. Like, yes, it would be great to be glamorous. I'd have celebrities ringside. I'd get a big purse and all this cool stuff. I have you calling my fight. But would it be true to what I really believe in, who I really want to be and desire for myself? Or would it just be a cash grab and, this futile pursuit of something that is not meant for me, bro? Like, if you go into anything without a spirit of contentment and true purpose, it's always going to be a futile pursuit. So, for me, I'm like, is it really worth it? Do I really want to be in here? When they lock that gate behind me, am I going to be like, this is what I wanted? Or am I going to be like, what am I doing here?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you got raging fans at the bar, like, yeah, you can kill him, kick his ass, bro. So it's just a different vibe. I'm thankful for where I'm at. It's a good place.
Well, that's beautiful. That's perfect, man. You don't need to make any other decisions then. Listen, and you also have a very unique opportunity to bring a lot of attention to wrestling.
Yeah, bro.
Actual, real, elite wrestling, post-college, post-Olympics, and to let people know there's still people competing. There's viable options to compete.
No one knows. No one knows what happens in wrestling. They're like, well, what are you doing between the Olympics? I'm like, well, there's still wrestling. There's world championships. Everyone's like, do you still wrestle? I'm like, bro, I have one of the biggest matches of the year coming up. I just wrestled in one of the biggest matches of the year. You're like, yes, I still compete, but people don't really follow.
Wrestlers follow.
Yeah, that's it. Just wrestlers. We're such a niche sport where the UFC's brand has exploded because you guys were in this kind of limbo era for a period of time, and now you guys are, one of the biggest sports in the world. And so it's been cool to kind of see the transition, and we've tried to take cues from you guys, from broadcasting weigh-ins to making, these matchups in these cards. One of the hardest things about wrestling is their tournaments. And so within a tournament, it can be hard to market the best matchups because there's upsets and a lot of things happen. Injuries, things just might not happen, right? So if you got all the best 170 pounders in the entire world, how do you know that GSP and Kamaru Usman are going to meet up? Because they're 1 and 2 seed, you never know.
Right.
Like, anything could happen.
Right.
And so I think that you guys have done a really good job with marketing the sport. You've brought in brand sponsors, and it has gone from this, redheaded stepchild to boxing where it's brutal and barbarian to this sport that it's seen as more of an art form. And there are a lot of guys that are responsible for that, and it's been cool to see. We're trying to replicate it, but it's much harder because
it's one of those things where I think for wrestlers it's fantastic to be able to watch elite wrestling. They love it. It's very enticing. But to people that have never wrestled before, it's kind of confusing what's happening. Yeah. And that's what I was saying about jiu-jitsu. That's one of the reasons why combat jiu-jitsu is it's literally the most popular thing that Eddie's come up with, because he's come up with these EBI tournaments or a sort of a different jiu-jitsu format. But combat jiu-jitsu, people understand people getting hit. And that's the thing about the UFC. When people understand the striking. It's simple. A guy punches a guy, you get it. A guy kicks a guy, you get it. But when fights go to the ground and people start going for submissions, to people that have never grappled, they have no idea what's happening.
Back to their feet.
Yeah, they want that. That's what they want. They don't understand it. So it's just a scramble, tangle of limbs. They don't really understand what's happening.
Well, we live in like a bloodthirsty society, right?
Bit
So
of that
people
too.
want to see that. Even if you watch a boxing fight, like if you watch, let's say, Bud Crawford versus Earl Spence, you're like, these dudes are the very best in the entire world at their craft. If there's not a knockout and there's a draw, unanimous decision after 12 rounds, you're going to be like, that sucked. I want to see someone get knocked out. But the chances are when you have two high-level guys like that, like they're not going to knock each other out. They're just going to they feel each other out, right? Throw a couple jabs, maybe hit each other with a couple power punches, but they're just too tough and too precise with their movements that they'll never knock each other out. So I think in wrestling, it's the same thing. Like, you have to be a wrestler to truly appreciate the craft. Like, you know what it takes to be the best, but you can't really respect it unless you're within it. Plus, it's not just a recreational sport. Wrestling it's taboo, right? It's kind of weird a little bit. Like, you wear singlets and like you just roll around with each other. Like, jiu-jitsu, I feel like you can go to a gym as a 40-year-old man that hasn't competed in 20 years, put on your gi and roll around with your coworker, and it can be completely normal. But you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't wrestle your coworker. Like, it'd be like, bruh, like, get off me, dog. Like, what are you doing? And so it's different. I feel like wrestling's one of the few sports that you can't just do
recreationally.
Yeah, you can't just go to the
You
local
have to,
gym
you
and
have to
YMCA
have
and
gone
just
through
roll
high
with it.
school or college.
You want to watch it, but you don't really want to be in it. So
yeah, like for MMA fighters that have never competed in wrestling at all, and they want to like learn how to wrestle, it's uncomfortable for them.
That's what I want to do. Like, I want to have, when I finish up my career, I'm going to make a high performance training center, and I'm going to invite all the best UFC fighters, all fighters, but I like the UFC's brand, to come train with me and help them sharpen up their skills and preparation for their big fights. So
where would you do that?
That's a good question. I'm from Jersey. I'm actually moving to Philadelphia next year with my family, but I want to be somewhere where the sun shines all year round. I want to be somewhere warm where there's no salt on my car. And
I hear you.
I can just sit outside and grill and hang out with the fam. So I don't know. That's a good question. It's got to be a desirable destination if you're going to get the best guys in the world to come. But I've got some invitations from some UFC fighters to come and train with them. I've got some invitations from jiu-jitsu guys to come train with them, from, Rory McDonald to, Tyron Woodley. Spent some time with GSP, from Vitor Belfort. I've gotten invitations from like Gordon Ryan and Johnny Torres and all these guys.
Oh, so like, jiu-jitsu guys as well.
Yeah, some jiu-jitsu guys as well. And I'm just always wrestling.
Right.
Wrestling takes up so much of my time, and I've got little ones at home, so it's really hard to do. But when I transition out of the sport, which I'm kind of in that phase now, I've got one more Olympic cycle in me, and then moving on to I really like to help fighters, because I feel like although I don't strike, and I'm not familiar with my striking, it's something I'll pick up later, just so I can know kind of how to incorporate your striking into your wrestling offense and defense. But I think I can be a really good asset for a lot of fighters, is to try to help them make that transition.
Oh, for sure. I mean, they would jump at the chance.
Yeah, it'd be fun, bro. It'd be fun. Plus, it's my wheelhouse. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it'll be cool to kind of rough them up a little bit there.
So 2021 is Japan. That's your next cycle. And so that is August? Is that what it is?
August, yeah. So I still got to make the team. So basically our Olympic trials are in April. I was a world medalist in 2019. They'll have a tournament for like 10 competitors. They'll wrestle. Whoever wins out of those 10 will wrestle me in the finals, best 2 out of 3. So I've got to wrestle one guy, beat him best 2 out of 3 to make the Olympic team at 163 pounds. So it's a big task, but
it's a big task.
It's fun. I'm excited.
2021 in Japan is going to be very fascinating. It's going to be interesting to see if they have any kind of they had a pretty good record with COVID for a while, but lately they've had a big surge.
It's wild, bro. Like, I don't know if there's going to be fans. And if there aren't fans, then it kind of eliminates what the games are all about. Like, there's a certain spirit in the village and on the buses and the railways and the train stations of people bustling in and out of the Olympic Stadium that just makes it special. You've got your flag draped over your shoulders and your country scarf. It's a pretty cool experience when you're at the Olympic Games. That's what I love about it, man. Like, where else can so many countries come together despite the political turmoil And, whatever may be happening within your own country, when you get together at the Olympic Games, like, it transcends everything.
Yeah.
Politics, race, gender, religion, like, it's nothing like it in the world, man. It's epic. There was a picture I had back in 2012 where in the gold medal match, I beat a guy named Sadiq Gadarzi from the Islamic Republic of Iran. And I've got my arm around him on the top of the podium, and on the back of our warm-ups said United States of America and, Islamic Republic of Iran. And so, like, we're like arm in arm. And it was just like a super special photo because our governments hate each other. And I've been to Iran on multiple occasions, and they love us, like literally rock star status when we're in Iran. They're following us at the airport. They're waiting for us outside the arena. They're trying to give you kisses, like hugs. Like,
there's the picture.
Epic. Wow. Like, epic photo, bro, because what you see that's personified in the media and what you experience when your boots are on the ground in a particular country like Iran is much different than the perception. And so the Iranian people, man, they're the best wrestling fans in the world outside of our own, right? I'm partial because I'm an American, but best wrestling fans in the world. Super knowledgeable, love the sport. They want the heroes to win. In America, we build up our heroes just so we can see if they can get knocked off. In Iran, they always want the hero to win. Everybody. So they wait for us at the airport, Joe. So like when we land on the tarmac, we walk out to the airport. They've got media there. They've got wrestling fans. They're giving us flowers, and they are coming to our hotel room. We've got armed guards on the floor of our hotel just to make sure nobody gets to our floor because they are waiting for us in the lobby just to take photos. Like,
that's crazy.
It's absolute insanity.
Are they the most rabid fans in terms of like
the most? No, there's no question about it. They've got chant leaders that come with bells and whistles and drums and like do 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 Iran do 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 do. Like they got their whisk, bro. Like and you know what's even crazier, Joe, is because of their strict Islamic religion, they don't allow women into the arenas.
Whoa.
So if you look in this picture, this is a sold out stadium, 8,500 men and boys only. No women allowed in the arena at all. Wow. And so it's pretty insane as to how much love and admiration they have for the sport, and particularly Americans, because I've beaten Iranians. I've never lost to an Iranian and wrestled a dozen of them, and they still love me. It's wild, but it's cool. Wow. It's cool.
That has got to be a trip to, I mean, one of the things about your career that's probably one of the most educational parts of it is this travel aspect.
Yeah.
I mean, how many different countries have you been to?
I've been to, I believe, last time I counted was 22.
Wow.
22.
That's wild. You've wrestled at 22 different countries.
22 different countries. And so I didn't get my passport until I was 20. So crazy. You have kids?
Yeah.
How many?
3.
Very nice. How old?
24, 12, and 10.
20. How old are you?
53.
You got get the hell out of here. I never would expect that. You look young.
Thank you very much.
You look young. You look good, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So I've got 3 little ones. My oldest is a little boy named Beacon. He's 6. My middle child, Aura, is a girl. And then our baby, Rise. She just turned 1 yesterday, actually.
Congratulations.
Thanks, man. And so all 3 of them had a passport before their first birthday. So it's wild. Like, you are who you are based on who your parents are and what they do. Or a lot of it is nature. And so I didn't get my passport until I was 20 years old, left the country for the first time, went to Istanbul, Turkey. My kids have all had passports before their first birthdays. My son, we counted before he was 1, he was on 42 flights.
Whoa.
42 flights before his first birthday.
That's crazy.
Traveled the world. They've been to Rio. They've been to, Canada. They've been to the World Championships, to the Olympic Games. They've been to Pan Am Games, like everything, all over the world. So it's wild to me to kind of experience that because I'm like, man, I never had this. Like, I grew up in a small town in South Jersey, and like, so whenever people are like, man, like, how do you maintain this certain level of sustainability and excellence over a long time? I was like, because I never expected it. So when I arrived here, I wanted to cling to it to see how long I could maintain it, because I never grew up desiring to be an Olympian. I hear a lot of Olympians like, man, I watch the Summer Games in Atlanta in 1996 on my grandma's couch, and I knew from that day forward that I wanted to win an Olympic gold medal. And I'm like, bro, that wasn't my story. I didn't know I could make the Olympic team until I was damn near on the team. And I was like, man, I'm pretty good. Like, I'm I'm gonna wrestle at the Olympic trials. Like I'm gonna see if I can do this. And so my kids have kind of had the direct benefit of all of the work that I've put in through this sport. And so it's been a tremendous blessing for me to kind of just see it rub off on them. My oldest Beacon and my middle Aura, they just started wrestling 3 weeks ago. And so I'm trying not to be the crazy dad, the crazy wrestling dad.
It's gotta be hard.
I'm sending them to their training facility, and they've got great coaches. But when they're on the mat, like, you know, there's 14 other kids there. So coaches are focused on everyone in the room, right? They can't show special attention to my kids just because I am who I am. And so I'm trying not to be the dad. I want to get on the mat. I'm like, bro, B, you're not doing that right, dude. Like, your head needs to go here. Your hands need to be locked here. But then I need to, like, kind of back off. Like, you know what? If he's going to love it, he's got to love it on his own.
Yeah, that's a tricky balancing act, right? Like, you don't want to push him too hard because then you might push him away from the sport or make them resent it because when you grow up and your dad is Jordan Burroughs and you're wrestling.
There's a lot of pressure.
Yes. I mean, I remember when Marvis Frazier fought Mike Tyson and Joe Frazier was in the corner, and I'm like, imagine growing up with Joe Frazier's your dad, and you gotta become a boxer too.
And you got to fight Mike Tyson.
And you got to fight Mike Tyson.
A monster
when he was on his way to the title. It was one of the most.
He didn't want that fight.
It was a terrible fight. Did you ever see that fight?
I did.
It was one of the most frightening Mike Tyson performances of all time, and that's saying a lot.
You know what? I think there's two ways I look at it. There's a guy that I know. His name is Ilias Diakomahalis, and he told me, he was like, his sons are great wrestlers, wrestle at Cornell, and he's like, my boys wanted to wrestle. I wrestled, and I wanted to teach them what I knew best. It's like, imagine you being the best in the world at something, and you letting your kids escape your home at 18 without you ever telling them or teaching them about what you were the best in the world at. That would be a travesty. You let your kids escape your home without teaching them something that you were the absolute best in the world at. So you don't have to push them or pressure them to do something. You allow the love to grow on their own. But if there's something that you are particularly great at, you have to give that knowledge and that information to the world. And so you become a man of the people, a man of your family. You're the best in the world at the sport of wrestling. Give that to them. Then let the decision be their own to decide if they want to take it further and, you know, I don't know, wrestle at the Olympics. It's so hard, man. Like, everyone's like, oh, your son, next Olympic champ. I'm like, yo, bro, chill, dog. Because then I feel the pressure.
Right.
So I'm like, not only is my boy, everywhere he goes, is like, damn, you're wrestling now? You better be good. Then he's feeling the pressure, and then I'm feeling pressure. It's like, oh, your son's wrestling now? Damn, I can't wait to see how great he's going to be. Because now I'm like, well, there's an expectation. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
6 years old, push-ups. No dinner until you do 5 rope climbs. You know what I mean? So it's like you have to always manage expectations, particularly with kids, because you want them to be so much, but also you have to prepare for normalcy. The hardest thing, you have resources, Joe. Like, you've done so much. You've been successful at your craft. You've got so much exposure, so many more resources than I imagine you had growing up. How do you not allow that to trickle down to your kids to give them more opportunity, but also accompany that with expectations? Like, look what I've become with nothing. So now look what you have the access to. Sky's the limit. Like, how do you balance that?
It's very tricky. And it's also tricky because the most interesting people that I know have come from nothing. They've all come from struggle, because I think struggle builds character. Yeah. Having to overcome adversity is one of the cornerstones of becoming like an actualized person.
Yeah.
Like, you have to get through something to realize what you're capable of, and it gives you confidence to be able to get through other things. And when your life is kind of easy, but you don't want your kids to go through hardship either, right? Yeah. So it's like this weird balancing act. Like,
you can if you facilitate it.
You gotta have, you gotta.
But
give
how do you
them
do that?
Structure. It's hard
because you want it easy too. It's like, are you gonna? I'm thinking about this from my perspective as a kid. The hardest moments that I had were associated with sport. Like, it was very rare that I had a difficult time in my life from 1 to 18 that wasn't because I had to train hard or had to wrestle hard or I cried because I got beat or choked out or slammed on my head. It wasn't hard, right? I didn't grow up on a farm. I grew up in a middle-class family in South Jersey in a suburban town. So my lifestyle was different, and my parents both raised in the city. My dad was from Philly. My mom was from Camden. So they wanted me to see a different side of what they didn't experience as a kid. So they wanted to kind of shelter me from that. They've done a tremendous job. I mean, I've achieved a level of success that they dreamed of for me, but also, there was a certain amount of grit that I had to develop just because of the contents of where we were. And like, it was suburban, but it was still kind of edgy. But now I kind of want to chill a little bit too, right? I'm like,
right.
I've done well. Like, I want to send my kids to the best school.
I think, though, you will lead by example, because one of the things that your kids will undeniably understand is how hard you work to get to where you are.
Yeah.
And that rubs off on your children. There's one thing where you teach them things, you show them, and you tell them, and you give them advice and talk to them. But another thing is they learn just from seeing what you do. When you have a dad who does what you do, which to be an elite wrestler, maybe people don't understand this, it is one of the most physically demanding pursuits in the world, period. It's a fact.
Yeah.
In terms of athletics, there's very few things that are as difficult and as grueling as wrestling. And to be elite at it, it's not like it's an insurmountable sport. It's not like something that takes a ton of equipment. It's not like something it's not like Formula One race car driving where you need $1 million to get a car. No, it's something that just requires a mindset. And also what you were saying before, there's no real money in it, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like it's something like basketball where there's this gigantic pot of gold waiting at the end of the rainbow.
It's bragging rights.
No, it's just toughness and grit, and your kids are going to understand that. There's no way they're not going to. And they will understand that there's a level of discipline and focus that you have that maybe they're going to see their friends' parents don't have.
So let me ask you this then. It's easy for them to see what I do because it's tangible, right? It's visible. You see dad lift weights, wrestle, cut weight. How in a guy like your position, someone extremely successful, but you can't, there's no physical grueling activity that's associated with it. So they may not be able to visibly see what it is that you are thinking about, aspiring to be, what you're doing, right? They're long hours away from home, maybe long hours at night and in the morning, but how do they see what you do, and how are they able to associate that with how they need to live moving forward? Like, what are the ways that you've been able to kind of teach your kids?
Well, they do see me work out, which helps too.
Yeah, good.
Because I don't have to, right? It's not like I'm doing it for a job, but I do it just...
I see you eating only steak. They're like, let's go. This is the life I want, Dad. I want steak and lobster every night, carnivore diet.
But I think I say this and I live this, that I think you need to struggle physically in life because it makes life easier. Because I think there's a lot of struggles that people go through psychologically, mentally, with work, with just relationships, with civilization. I think when you struggle physically, like really struggle physically, I think it makes those things easier because you're putting yourself through something you don't really have to do. It's not part of your job. But if you put yourself through grueling workout routines, I think it makes things easier. And my kids see that because we have a gym in the house. They see me work out.
Do they work out?
Yeah, they work out. And
Good.
One of my daughters is really into gymnastics and the other one is really into basketball. But when they were young, they also were into martial arts. And, I would take them to, when they were younger, they're still young, but I would take them to martial arts gym, and I would even demonstrate some things with the teacher and do some stuff. And, they got into jiu-jitsu, they got into a little bit of kickboxing.
Yeah.
And so they got to see that I do a lot of shit, and I've reached a high level of proficiency at those things that I do.
Yeah.
And so they get to see that.
That's good.
It's not even a part of my job necessarily, other than like calling MMA fights, but they get to see, you could be lazy. You could just sit back and just count your money and just eat food all day, but I don't.
Eat steaks.
I get after it.
What's funny is my kids don't even realize that what I do is what makes a living for us. They're just like, oh yeah, Dad wrestles. Because like for them, they wrestle.
Right.
So like, what's the difference between what you do and what I do? Like I go to practice and get coached. You go to practice and get coached.
So where do they think the money's coming from?
They just exist, bro. They're just like, we just have a roof over our head and a cabinet full of snacks, and I'm happy, man. So
do you get paid to win tournaments?
We do, yeah. So like here's the bulk of a wrestler's income or Olympian's income. One for us is we built what we call RTCs, regional training centers, that are in conjunction with collegiate programs. We get paid pretty much to train there because they use our name and likeness to kind of elevate their programs. to help with recruiting, but also we're in the room with their guys daily. So we kind of teach the college guys. We're sharpening them, helping them develop. So that's number one. Number two, sponsors, right? So primary sponsors. I'm sponsored by ASICS, Ralph Lauren, Bridgestone, Comcast, and Xfinity. So like you have corporate sponsors that align with you during Olympic years, non-Olympic years to provide you with product. They'll pay you to create digital marketing campaigns and really just align with what it is that you're doing. If your brand, kind of fits their spectrum of what they're trying to create. And then lastly, that is if you win. They have what they call the Living the Dream Fund. So you get money for world championship medals, Olympic medals, going to like all these tournaments. And then what we're doing Saturday night. So if you go to these cards for like Flow Wrestling, it's pretty much like the UFC. Like you have deals where it's like, okay, this guy is this level of opponent. It's going to be watched by these many viewers. You're going to get this number of subscribers. Here's what we feel like we can pay you. So yeah, there are numerous ways that you can get paid, but it's definitely changed. I was talking to Daniel the other day. He said that when he was with Adidas, when he was an Olympian back in 04 and 08, he was getting $12,000 a year. $12,000 a year, $1,000 a month he was getting to wrestle. And he was like, I just had to retire from the UFC because my back was just killing me. I had to have back surgery. He was like, you know why my back hurts? From wrestling for 25 years, shooting it on guys' legs and being stuck underneath of them. And I was like, damn. And he's like, man, there's so much money in UFC. He's had two lives, literally two lives, two careers. And he's become amazing at this. And he always had this character and personality, but you just were unable to utilize it financially. You could monetize that in wrestling. It just didn't work. So we're in the precipice of doing something extremely cool. Wrestlers are now actually earning a living by doing this. You don't have to transition to MMA. And that's why I think that a lot of guys have stayed in the wrestling sport. Like we have some really great athletes. Myself, Kyle Snyder, Kyle Dake, David Taylor, Jaden Cox, James Green, like all these amazing athletes. But I think would be great fighters, but wrestling now you can earn a living. And it's not DC a lot, but it's decent.
Daniel's such an unusual human being because not only does he have two careers, like he had the wrestling career, then an MMA career, but he also has a commentator career because he's so fun.
Good.
He's
so
great.
Funny.
He's fun, man. He's fun.
He's the best.
He's so fun to do it with. Like me and him have and John Anik, we have so much fun together.
Yeah, I called him the other day, and Daniel's the man, right? He's done so well in his UFC career, and although he knew me within wrestling, now that he's made this transition, you're weary. Like you don't just cold call people and like have expectations for what it is that they can provide for you. But I'm like, bro, like I would like to call you. Like, is this okay? My wife's just like, call him. Like he'll answer your call, and I'm like, I'm not just calling this man. This man's a big deal. And so she's like, just call him. So I text him, and he's like, yeah, just call me tomorrow. So I call him. And like, I thought it was just going to be like a quick, really short conversation. And he's like, we're on the phone for like 30, 45 minutes, just kind of shooting the breeze and chopping it up. And I'm just like, damn, like I felt like a lot of joy after that call because he just has the ability to make you smile and to make everyone that he encounters feel valuable.
Yes.
That's something that he really does well. And that's what I want to possess that. When you make people that you see feel value, regardless of their status, that's a special trait to possess. And I don't think everyone has that because you're so busy, bro. Like everyone wants a hold of you. I made an Instagram post a few weeks ago. It's like once you become successful in anything, you become a man of the people. The people want so much of you because they're essentially who pays your bills. Not technically, but they watch your show and they elevate your ratings. They buy my wrestling shoes and watch my wrestling matches. So it's just a different vibe. So I always try to feel a certain level of obligation and responsibility to the people while still maintaining a certain level of privacy for myself and my family. But it can be hard. So sometimes you're like, yo, Joe, what's up, bro? Like, let me get a picture. I love you. You're a big fan.
The problem is when I'm with my family.
You're like, bro,
that's when or when you're eating.
Here, give your kids. Hey, excuse me, kids. Yeah. Like, I need to take a picture with your dad. I've had people hand their phones to my wife.
Restaurant. Like, my daughter was sitting on my lap, and we were at a restaurant, and this guy came over, and he was trying to get a picture.
He sat on your other knee.
He was on his knees right here while my daughter's on my lap. And I'm like, you don't think this is kind of fucked up? You don't think this is the wrong?
What was his response?
He goes, yeah, it is. I go, this is not the way to do this, man. Cool. We're all sitting here eating.
Come on, man. How do you balance that though? Because
it's hard. it's tricky.
Sometimes you have to take a certain level of privacy for yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
You got to just say, I cannot, not right now.
Yeah,
Sir,
I
please.
usually say when I'm done eating, when I get up, I said I'll be happy to take a picture with you. But
hang tight.
If you let everybody interrupt your meal, then you can't go out. Now I can't go out because then you can't sit down and just eat.
Do you just go out and about like in the city?
Yeah, I go out.
And like, is
go
it
out. I
a
always
daily
have gone
occurrence
out.
where you're like, yo, Joe?
Yeah.
And you're like,
Everybody's friendly. It's mostly just a bunch of people saying hi.
Yeah.
That's mostly what it is. It's mostly like, what's up? Hey, what's up? I say hi too. It's all good.
That's
it's
dope.
99.99999% good. And every now and then you run into a drunk. You know, that's sometimes that's a pain in the ass, but even they're usually pretty good. It's just sometimes people just don't understand privacy. They don't understand personal space. They just get weird. But it just also they get like if someone's a gigantic wrestling fan and they meet you, they're probably bugged out. They don't understand how to behave. They're all nervous and weirded out.
The intangibles of being really good at what you do.
Yeah. Well, especially if you're trying to if you're aspiring to be a great wrestler as well, and you have these guys all in your head and you watch matches on YouTube and, you know, you idolize these certain wrestlers and then all of a sudden you're in front of one of them and you didn't expect it. I mean, you might just babble out something stupid. One day I'm going to pin you, man. Like, shit, what the fuck did I say? I told Jordan Burroughs I was going to pin him.
I didn't mean that. I just really wanted a picture, bro.
Yeah, sometimes people just get nervous. They don't know how to behave. They don't know what to say, and they make you uncomfortable even though they don't want to. They invade your space when they just want to show admiration.
That's a good perspective. You got to like kind of exhibit a certain amount of grace when dealing with the public, and especially in your position. But I imagine that some days it's like it's a little tough.
It's just most of the time it's easy.
Yeah.
The vast majority of the time. But occasionally, like you'll have a bite of food in your mouth, and someone, hey man, can I get a picture? And you're like, come on, dude.
That's a blessing though that you have that perspective, because there are a lot of people who don't, and by the time that they realize it, it's too late, and they've already burned so many bridges and had so many bad encounters with the people.
Yeah,
that
can happen
just not
too.
Good for.
It's not good for PR. Yeah, it's not good for how people look at you. It's not good for you either. It's not good for how you feel about yourself. You know, like if I have a bad encounter with somebody, I don't feel good about it. It makes me feel bad too. I want all encounters with all humans that I encounter to be fun.
Yeah.
I'm a fun person. I'm friendly. I like to be friendly to everybody. That's what I want.
And making people feel good is like it's a cool experience.
It is.
Because like for them, it means the world. For you, it's just like, wait, hey, what's up, bro? Like, good to meet you, man. Let me take a photo with you. Like, tell your friend I said what's up. And they're like, oh my gosh, you'll never believe what happened to me today. And for you, you're like, oh yeah, saw a guy at Chipotle. It was good.
Yeah, there's a responsibility, and I'm sure you experience that as well, right? There's a responsibility of being someone that people look up to. Like you're not just a regular person. You're a person that a lot of people are aware of, and they're following what your career is. They're following what you do. They follow you at the Olympics. They follow you at the World Championships. They pay attention online when they're not watching it. And they're trying to figure out, you know, how you're doing what you're doing, and they want to emulate you. And that's why I'm asking you about your training routines and what you're eating and things like that. Because I'm sure people are listening, like, how often does he train? How does he approach his mornings? Like, what does he eat first?
That's
like,
good.
I mean, that's how
that's
they look
funny.
at it.
That's one of the things that I kind of want to discuss. I hope I'm not taking too much of your time.
No, man, come on, it's what I do.
Is mindset.
Yeah,
right? Is mindset. I've transitioned to follow sustainable success, like guys who have been able to do it for a really long time. Tom Brady, LeBron James, Rafael Nadal, Roger Federer, Serena Williams, you know, I don't know, Sue Bird, like so many athletes that it's easy to do it early on in your career, hard to do it over a long period of time, especially with all of the distractions. You get bread, you get fame, you get this recognition, you start winning championships. It's easy to become complacent. How do you maintain a certain level of success for a long period of time? That's something like people ask me that daily, particularly because I'm in this fatherhood element too. So this adds like an extra layer of depth, because in wrestling, I'm considered the old guy. Right. I'm the oldest guy on the team now. No one else has 3 kids, you know, so it's a very different avenue and lane that I'm within. So I'm trying to balance these things all together. But I really have now transitioned from this young upstart trying to be this hotshot guy, get my name out, to now I'm like this old wise yogi where I'm like, hey, listen, you can be successful at multiple things, my friend.
Yeah.
And so it's been a really cool transition for me, is going from this place where, you know, you're young, you're just trying to get your name out, to now you're balancing multiple principles and parts of your life where it's like, okay, can I be a great husband, great father, and be driven?
You know what I think you could do too?
What's that?
Corporate speaking.
I appreciate that.
I think
Thank
you'd
you.
be fantastic at that.
I've dabbled in it a little bit. You know what? My wife's going to kill me for saying this, but we're considering a fourth. Right? So we're in that position now where we're like, do we attempt to have a fourth? Right? We've blessings, beautiful, bring joy to us every day. We see him, except when it's bedtime, right? Like no one's thirstier or hungrier than a toddler at bedtime.
Of course.
I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. I got to go to the bathroom. I want to give you a hug. But we're in that realm now where we're like, do we have another? Can we balance this? Can we maintain it? And can I still do what I do at a high level?
Right.
There's a certain responsibility that I feel to my family where they need me. And I want to have a really special relationship with all of them, and I want to be integral in each of their development. But can I do that with an additional slice of the pie, a fourth child, and also still being ambitious? And that's a tough balance. And so we're trying to figure that out. It's like, is the joy weighed against, you know, kind of the lifestyle that we have now? Can we maintain this certain level of that we've become comfortable with? And it's good. So, you know, I'm always trying to figure those things out on the fly. And so kind of watching you and hearing that you have 3 kids and you're still moving and shaking, and from LA to Austin to, you know, doing the UFC and flying all over the world. It's a really interesting perspective. How do you manage the things that you have on your plate in regards to being successful in so many different realms and still also having healthy relationships?
Well, I've been really, really lucky. First of all, everything I do, I like doing. It's easy.
Married?
Yeah.
How long?
11 years now.
Very
11
nice.
years. But it's easy. Like, it's easy. Doing this is easy.
Yeah.
Doing stand-up it's not easy. It requires work, but it's enjoyable. I love it. I love doing it. I love doing UFC commentary. Wouldn't say it's easy, but it's enjoyable. It's but either easy is the wrong word. Like even podcasting, like it requires focus and thought and preparation. Not everybody can do it. A lot of people could do it if they put the effort into it, but it's just a matter of, is it something that you enjoy doing, and is it something you look forward to even after all? I've been doing this podcast for 11 years now. I still love doing it. Still fun. It's fun. I enjoy it. So it makes it easy.
Yeah.
It makes it easier. So in that regard, like, it's not something that's a labor to me, right? All these things are not something that's a labor. So I'm very fortunate in that regard. But I think that's like one of the keys to success, is finding the thing that excites you always. Finding a thing that's challenging always.
Yeah.
A thing that you really enjoy doing. A thing that like works for your personality. Clearly, you've got that with wrestling. And I feel like with a guy like you, what you have is like this incredible vehicle, meaning your mind, your focus, your discipline, and all what you've done with wrestling, you could do with anything. You just have to find a track.
That's
so
good.
The thing is, like, some people don't find a track. Some people, they get really good at fighting or whatever it is, and they become this bad motherfucker, but that's their identity.
Yeah.
And they can't figure out a way to focus that. Like Miyamoto Musashi, he's a famous samurai, wrote this book, The Book of Five Rings. It's a great book on strategy. And he has this great quote that I remember. I read this when I was a little kid. When I first got into martial arts, it said, once you know the way broadly, you can see it in all things. And I think that once you find excellence in something like you have in wrestling, you can be excellent in anything, especially wrestling, because it's so fucking hard to do.
There's a level of excellence that you have to kind of weed yourself out, right? There's a certain level you can be successful with just talent and hard work, whatever, but then there gets to a place where you have to maintain a multifaceted, balanced lifestyle.
Yes.
Discipline, mental endurance, freaking structure, and a great team. Like
diet,
so many different
focus, everything has to be on point.
Everything.
And to be at your level, to be at a world championship level, there can be no holes in your game.
Yeah.
You don't have the luxury of slacking off.
Margin of error
between victory and silver medal.
Or no
bronze medal. No medal. Yeah,
no medal.
These margins.
Gold and going home with a towel over your head.
Yeah.
You know?
And that can translate into anything. You can do that with any business that you start, anything that you pursue, whatever you want to do.
That's good. That's good because, one of the things for me that for a long time made me nervous about the transition out of sport, most people at 30, 34 are settling into what they're going to do forever, or at least until retirement, long term. Right? So you spend your 20s having a good time after college, you're making a little bit of money, you move to a new city, meet new people, you start to settle down, you finally get that job, you get that promotion, and now you have this path that you're going to go through until you're 59 and a half. But most athletes, you're phasing out of what you've done for your entire life at the same time that most people are transitioning into what they're going to do for the next 30 years. So it's a very difficult proposition that we are experiencing, where I've wrestled since I was 6. My first weight class was 45 pounds. Now all of a sudden here I am and my wrestling career is over. I hang my shoes up and I'm like, what now?
Right. You're in the prime of your life.
What now?
Right.
Because you have to find something that you're passionate about. And my fear is that there may be nothing that I ever experienced that I'm as passionate about as I am the sport of wrestling. I'm a competitor naturally. That's just by nature. And I have to kind of broaden my horizons where I'm going to enter with this certain level of excellence into everything that I do, which I know if I enter something and I'm going to do it wholeheartedly, I'm going to be successful at it. But the question is, do I really love it?
Right.
So you're trying to find what you love when most people have just found it. So the athletic experience is much different than the average Joe experience.
Yeah.
And so I've seen so many athletes post-career spend all their money, get depressed, go into addicting substances. And it's a very difficult place that you arrive in when you don't know who you are. For so long, our identities have been tied to our success. Everywhere I go, people call me champ. Like, I'm not Jordan, I'm not Burroughs, I'm not JB, I'm champ. And so when I go out of this phase and I'm no longer looked upon as this iconic wrestling guy who is going to beat the hell out of you every time I deem I need to, and I'm just a normal human being, how do I make that transition and find what else it is that I am passionate about? And so I think now, for a long time, I've been afraid to think of other things because people are like, no. Like, you'll have time. Like, keep the main thing. Just focus on winning. The more you win, the more opportunities you'll have. But then that's how you have the guy that won't retire, overstays his welcome, diminishes and tarnishes the legacy that he's built for himself because they just won't leave.
I don't think you have to worry about that.
I don't. Fortunately, right?
But just listening to what you're saying right now, you've already laid out all the pitfalls.
Well, I've got a great team. I'm a man of faith. I've got a great wife who keeps me level-headed. But yeah, so I'm always thinking about these things like as we're making this transition. So I see athletes and I also see the ones who've done it for a long time. But not only that, the ones who go on to success after their careers. That's what I'm most impressed about. How can you elevate your profile when no one's watching you shoot hoops anymore, fight, play like Kobe and, Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan, all these athletes that have parlayed their success as athletes into corporate success elsewhere. Like that's what I love to see. That's dope.
Well, you just have to find the thing. That's the difficult thing. And you can't look too hard right now because right now you have to focus on wrestling and your family and all the other obligations that you have already.
But how do you find it? That's the thing.
Hard.
You have to dabble simultaneously because you can't just wait until it's over because then and even if you have done success, you have been successfully enough financially where you can buy yourself time. It's like, listen, I'm good. I made a couple $1,000,000. My house is paid for. My cars are good. Kids are in good schools. I'm fine for 5 years, right? And you'll find alternative ways to make money and still do what you love. But the one thing I don't want to do is do stuff for money or do things that I don't believe in. Right. Like I want to do things that are truly honorable and that I really find are noble pursuits. Like this is what I want to do because I want to do it. And so trying to find that thing, I've had to kind of dabble in these other kind of perspectives because as wrestlers, like you have this generalized idea of what a wrestler is, right? It's like, okay, it's kind of like a meathead guy from the Midwest that grew up on a farm, right? And freaking eats T-bone steaks. Even he eats the bones too. And so it's a trying to kind of step outside of wrestling. One of the things that I've always tried to do is transcend sport, or at least transcend wrestling. Right? It's how can I broaden our audience and bring it all back to wrestling so everyone wins. We all elevate our profiles simultaneously. It's a difficult thing to do, but it's almost been a responsibility that was early on just placed upon me because I was just winning. And now, like, I've taken on the responsibility because I want to do it. But now I'm like, okay, well, I have to also be the first guy to move on and have success outside of the wrestling forum that's not a coach. If you look at the college landscape in college wrestling, the head coaches, most of them are Olympic champions. Tom Brands, Cale Sanderson, John Smith, you've got all these guys that wrestled at Iowa, wrestled at, some of the best universities in the country and world. Most head coaches were either Division I national champions or Olympic and world medalists. It's just a natural progression. You are a good wrestler, you go on and coach and take over a university and build this program up. But very few people want to kind of explore outside of the realm of just coaching itself. And so I'm trying to get to a place where I feel comfortable with being countercultural and doing something different that's almost it's opposed to where I am as a wrestler, because most Olympic champions just coach. That's
what kind of things are you considering? Like what?
That's a good question. So I told you about my high performance training center.
Right.
I'd like to dabble in.
That seems like it's right in your wheelhouse.
That's in my wheelhouse. That's something I want to create. Like, this is the mothership for all things, and it will be multifaceted, like in capturing all areas of human identity, from nutrition to spirituality to self-developing, all these things, because you have to create good men and women in order for them to be good athletes. I think, and we still, at the highest level, you can find it sometimes, but I feel like they're weeding themselves out. The best athletes that have sustained success are men and women of integrity, at least to some degree, right? Like, you might see some individuals that, have a bad rap or are engaged in controversy regularly, but they eventually start to lose whatever zest it was that they had for their sport, and they can't win for a long period of time. But the best, they're not embroiled on controversy. Look at LeBron and Tom Brady. Like, when have you ever seen them in the news for something crazy they did at home?
True.
You just don't see it.
Right.
And that's why they're still those guys.
Yeah.
And so I think that
Discipline.
For me, it starts with a certain level of discipline that you have to give to the youth. Like, hey, listen, I'm going to teach you how to have mental toughness. I'm going to teach you how to be accountable. I'm going to teach you how to be disciplined. And then we're going to learn athletics, how to be great wrestlers afterward. Because if I can create men and women of character and integrity, then essentially they'll become champions naturally, because the people I respect most weren't the best athletes. Like, I've wrestled with hundreds of wrestlers in my lifetime, and the ones that had the best leadership qualities weren't the ones that were the best wrestlers. It was the ones that were low maintenance, that did the right things, came to practice on time. They were good teammates. They did well in school. They were good leaders. They were guys that you just trusted.
All these things you're saying to me, I feel like what I was saying earlier about you doing corporate speaking engagements, I think you would be really good at that.
Thanks. Any corporations out there that are looking for somebody to come and speak to
think about what you've
company?
accomplished.
Let's go.
And again, I don't want to belabor this, but to become a world champion wrestler, to win 4 world championships, to win an Olympic gold medal, you have a mindset that very few people will ever be able to understand without hearing it come out of your voice. They're probably not going to understand what it takes to be a person like yourself, but you can articulate it. And the way you articulate it, it's very inspiring.
Thanks, man.
And you also have a very, you have an ethical and a moral vision for the kind of children you want to raise, the kind of athletes you want to train, the kind of people that you admire. All that stuff translates into any other business, any other pursuit. These are key components for success. It's not just wrestling, right? Like, what you've achieved in wrestling is because of all these other things, because of the hard work, because of the discipline, because of the focus and the intelligence and all these other aspects of what makes you you. But those things you could teach to people.
Yeah.
And you teach clearly by example because of your achievements, but also because of the way you're able to express yourself.
Yeah.
And for you to be able to do something like that, to have a training center like you envision, it would be dope. But also, I really think you could be very valuable speaking to corporations.
I appreciate that.
And you could, all these things that we're talking about today, you could structure this in some sort of like a plan where you get in front of these people and give them real tools that they can apply to their life that can improve them in everything they do.
That'd be fun, man. I'd love it.
I think that's your thing, man.
I'd love it. You know,
I really do.
You have to. I've been taught for so long because I'm an athlete. So naturally, I've never worked. I had one job when I was 19 years old.
Really?
Between my sophomore and junior
Your whole
year.
life?
One job. For one summer, 2 months, I worked at a beer distribution factory back in South Jersey. We go around on big trucks every day, and we go to all the liquor stores and bars in the town, and we would drop off kegs and spike them off the truck and bring them and set up displays inside liquor stores. That was what I did for one summer. And I made $13 an hour. And so each week I make about $550. And I remember at the time, like, I thought I was a rich man, bro. I was like, let's go. I take my girlfriend to the mall. We go to Aeropostale. At the time, that's what we were wearing, Abercrombie and Fitch. And we would buy a bunch of clothes and we go to the movies and we'd hang out. And I would spend all $500 in a single week living life. And so I have to see myself as this person that can implement different levels of advice and ideas to people that aren't necessarily peers, right? It's easy to talk to a peer. It's easy to talk to someone who's younger than you that admires you, but it's hard for you. I have like this inferiority complex where it's like, okay, if this person is successful, then they already have the tools. They don't need me. Like, they know what they're doing. So I think that for me, finding that niche into where I'm like, okay, listen, you've done well, you know things, you've experienced them, you've lived them firsthand. How can you use all of the knowledge that you've gained on your journey to actually help other people? They will be willing to listen. If you teach it, they will listen.
This is how you do it. You teach what you learned.
Yeah.
What you learned in your life that helped you. And just say, you don't have to teach them like you need to do this.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that. You say,
if they ask,
did
right?
this.
If they ask.
Yeah.
I'm really scared of unsolicited advice. That is one thing that I'm always like really weary of. Because, bro, like, who wants to hear from someone that you didn't ask for?
Right.
You know, it's like, I didn't send for you, bro. Like, why are you giving me advice? I don't want it.
Right.
So I'm always trying to be like,
giving unsolicited advice.
Where I'm like, I'm the guy that I have a hard time with telling people what they need to do or what they should do, what I think will help improve their lives, because that would insinuate that I have a better life and I know more.
Well, it's also a tricky thing because when you're doing that, like, if you have to do the type of person that needs that information that's really going to use it, they're going to ask you.
Yeah.
They're going to say, hey, man, I really respect you. What you've done is amazing. How do you do this? What are you doing? What's your day like?
Yeah,
how do you start? Because they want to know, because they want to do it. Not if you know, like, if someone doesn't have the desire, if someone they don't want to like seek out the information, like, you don't want to give it to them because they're not going to do anything with it anyway.
Right.
You're not going to get into someone's head unless they want to let you in.
Yeah.
Right. And the people that want to let you in, they're the people that are going to want to ask. They're the people who are going to want to listen to you talk on this podcast. They're the people that, if you did have like some sort of a seminar that you did for corporations or for anybody that wants to be motivated, and you can explain what you've done in your life and what led you through discipline, what gave you the focus, how you kept that fire alive. Those things are inspirational to people.
Yeah,
Inspiration is fuel. It's one of the greatest things that I personally use. Like, I'm inspired by so many different people. I'm inspired by people's discipline and people's achievements.
Discipline's a big thing, man.
It's everything.
I tell my kids all the time, be disciplined or be disciplined.
Ooh.
All right, so I'm like, hey, listen, like that, I have to teach you, son. Like, if you decide to do this,
it's a great phrase.
You will choose discipline. I got that from our pastor, Love Church in West Omaha, Todd Doxson. So he says, be disciplined or be disciplined. Because we have to I have to teach my son, like, hey, bro, like, this world's it's hard. It's hard, Dad. Like, that fig bar that you just ate for a snack before bed, I had to work hard to get that. You know how many double eggs I had to shoot to get this house? But no, honestly, I always want to give him perspective because as kids, they don't really understand. I read a book by Dr. Meg Meeker called Raising Ungrateful Kids in an Entitled World. or raising grateful kids in an entitled world. And so basically the premise behind the book was, how can we provide for our kids a life in which we're creating character, but also give them more than we had? There's just so much expectation. Like, my kids, sometimes they're like, just because I exist, this should be afforded to me. Right. I'm like, bro, like, no, that's not how things work here. Like, first of all, if you treated any one of your friends the way you treat mom and dad and your sister sometime at home, they'll beat you up. They wouldn't want to spend time with you. It's true. Like, it's just the bottom line. And so I'm always under this mindset and this premise, and I try to do a greater job every day at being a better father. That, you know, I don't think people are born good. I think people are born bad, and then they are constructed to be people of integrity. You know, you see the videos and the cute little anecdotes of kids hugging and smiling with each other. It's like, oh, see, kids love each other from jump. It's like, if you think people are inherently good, you've never had one Rice Krispie treat left in your cabinet with 2 hungry kids. Because when there's one treat that comes out, they're scrapping. They're scrapping, bro. It's a fight. It's a straight up fight. And so I have to continuously always try to sharpen and refine them, because in our human profile, we're just innate. We're within the flesh. Like, we're always going to want to please ourselves. And so there are so many times where I'm like, bro, listen, if you just give her the bigger piece now, I promise you that you'll be rewarded for it later. If you can just treat your mom with character and respect now, I promise you that I will reward you later. But it's so hard, because in their flesh, they're like, I don't want that. She doesn't have the bigger piece. You know, I don't want to go to bed. Why does she get 2 Christmas presents and I got 1? So I'm just always trying to figure out ways in which that I can implement the things that I've learned. But it's hard because no one gives you an instruction manual for parenting.
Right.
Like, I had my son at, I think I was 25, 26, and I was fresh out of college, and I left home at 18, and everything that I learned after 18 was learned in an environment where I was just trying to figure things out on the fly.
Isn't it crazy?
So you leave the hospital and they're like, here you go.
No one trains you how
I'm like, wait, we got to leave? We got to take this thing with us? They're like, sir, you got to bring the car seat up, put the baby in the car seat, and then you got to walk him down, and
you were
good
25.
Luck. That's it.
It's
and
hard.
Like, I was still a baby.
Yeah.
I was still a baby, and I was growing and developing myself. So I think you get better with each kid. Each kid gets a better life than the original, right? The first one's the hardest. And
the test.
That's the test.
The test baby.
So the baby is like, the baby of your family is always going to be the one that gets the best version of you. The oldest is going to get the rough draft of yourself, and then you're just kind of working from there.
Sometimes the youngest kids are the ones that achieve the most, though. That's what's interesting.
Yeah,
it's because like it's a more casual way of raising the kids. You're not as worried about them, because the first one you're like, don't touch that.
Yeah. What did he eat? Get this over. We gotta watch his mouth out.
The third one, you're like, yeah, you can do a backflip. Go ahead, do a backflip.
Listen, sometimes all we tell them is, listen, we don't want to go to the urgent care this weekend, please. Like, Dad just doesn't want to go to the hospital. Just as long as there's no blood, you can play the floor is lava and jump from couch to couch. Just please, no one get hurt.
Don't get cut up. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard, and no one teaches you how to do it, and it's the most important thing in the world. And that's the weirdest thing about being a parent. It's like, it's so easy to get someone pregnant.
So it's harder marriage or parenthood?
Well, parenthood is more complicated, because you're taking a person who is a tiny little baby and you're teaching them about life, and you're talking to them and you're explaining things, and you're experiencing all the little troubles that they go through, and try to talk them through it and try to discipline them and keep them from doing things. But I got very lucky with my wife, and she's a great person, and she's a nice person. Just one of the best things about her. She's so nice. She's just so nice. She's just a nice person, and I get along with her.
You're so nice.
She's such
Mrs. Rogan.
She's a sweetheart. She really is. But she's also really funny and really smart. I got lucky. Yeah. And I have friends that are not lucky.
That's a blessing, bro.
It's a blessing. I have friends that are in a bad marriage. You know
what I was talking about this with my wife. And this is twofold. I don't want to blame this completely on the women, because men are the one that decide to court and pursue women. But could you imagine how much further or how much lower the divorce rate would be if women said no during the proposal? Like, how much lower would divorce rate be if women said, nah, too many red flags, Nah. Like I'm good. Like I saw what you did the other day, or I went through your phone, or this won't make things better. This won't improve our relationship. I'm pregnant, but I don't want to get married. And if men, consciously thought about the proposal process, but I think that this has become such a heralded event that when you get proposed to, naturally you're like, yes, we'll figure it out later. Where if you just said no now, and then you'll figure it out from there. There's a Christian author, Jefferson Bethke, says, always say no first and then convince yourself otherwise. But don't say yes and then convince yourself not to do it. Because once you say yes, you're so much of the world's problems come from people saying yes when they don't really want to.
With everything.
There's so many responsibilities we take on and we don't really want to do it, but we feel like we should.
There are things that people romanticize, right? Marriage is definitely one of them. And then certain jobs are one of them. Like certain jobs, like becoming successful at a job that's not interesting to you, but everybody's telling you, hey, it's a good job, you should do it.
Yeah.
And you wind up doing it, and then you're stuck, and you don't know how to get out of it, and now your life is out of your hands.
Yeah, but you got a great wife, and that was a blessing for you because you see firsthand your buddies that are going through struggles and difficulties at home.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily just because of their wives either. It's because of them too.
Well, yeah, no, it's not the wives. It's the men.
Yeah.
But we overburden the women when we should be the lead. So it's like, hey, I want to marry you because I promise to change and do better and reflect on the red flags and eliminate them. But the women, we put them in a position where there's so much pressure that they can't say no. So you're like, we know that this is something that they desire to have. So
I think you also just
we
have to
present
find
it
the
to
right
them and
person.
say, here, I'm going to dangle this carrot out in front of you, Joe, because I know this is what you really want. So please forget everything that I've done in the past. Like, I'm a man, like before I was married, like I came with a lot of baggage, but because of the excellence that I wanted to kind of characterize and have, I wanted to change because I wanted to be a good husband. I wanted to be a good father.
I think you're going to do that with everything, though. I think a person like yourself that has this sort of integrity and focus, you're going to do this with everything you do.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what makes a champion. I mean, really what you want to be is a champion in everything, right? A champion in life, a champion as a father, a champion as a parent, a champion as a husband, a champion as a neighbor, a champion as a friend. I mean, what you're doing is like you're just operating at the highest standards.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why I think you'd be amazing at public speaking.
I appreciate that.
I really do. I think because you really do embody
I'm going to get I'm going to take a video like, hey,
so
listen,
good at
Joe
this.
Rogan endorsed me. He said that you have to have me.
Look at this
at your
conversation
next
we're
corporate
having.
event.
You're so good at this. You're
At
so
your
good
next
at
corporate event.
How many podcasts have you done before?
Not many.
You're fucking great at it, man.
Thanks,
Look
bro.
how great you are expressing yourself.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's fun, right?
It's fun, yeah.
But you're great at it. You're great at expressing yourself. And you really do live the life that you're talking about. And you have the achievements.
Authenticity.
Yes.
It's important. You got to be authentic, bro.
Authenticity is everything.
People can see through the facade.
See through the bullshit. Yeah.
Because they see you, right? They see you.
I want to talk to you about this. When you're talking about authenticity, I want to talk to you about, have you ever seen the movie Icarus?
I have dabbled. Honestly, I don't want to watch it entirely because I would be so angry afterwards.
It's crazy.
Because I've lost to Russians in some of the biggest matches of my career. And I know if I saw that, I would be so pissed off because they have changed my life in terms of being an Olympic champion, winning more world titles, more golds. They've taken money out of my pocket, notoriety and fame away from me, and it'll really upset me. So that's why I've decided not to.
It's a good thing to watch just to understand the sophistication
just
involved.
To be upset.
Let me explain to people that don't know what we're talking about. Icarus is a documentary by Brian Fogel, and Brian was a cyclist, and what he did was he decided to do a race, and it was for the documentary. He did a race completely natural, recorded his results, and then he hired this Russian gentleman who was a part of the Russian, supposedly their anti-doping association.
Which meant drop the anti.
Yeah. Right. Well, he eventually, as time went on, it got exposed, but he just completely lucked into this situation where he hired this guy to tell him, what should I do? His name was Grigory Rychenkov. Thank you, Jamie.
You're the man, Jamie.
He is the man. And Grigory told him exactly what he should take and when he should take it and do this and do that. And this is how, and then he was going to do the same race again the following year, but juiced up and see what the difference in performance was. Along the way, the Sochi Olympics gets exposed that the Russians had cheated. And what they had done was, it was a super sophisticated scandal where they cut a hole in the wall and they were like transferring the dirty piss through one hole and giving them the clean sample to replace. So they had found that there was microscopic scratches in these supposedly impossible to open bottles. Yeah. So the Russians had figured out a way to open these bottles.
Those things.
And
have you seen the real ones? Have you ever seen one of the real bottles?
No, I haven't seen them in the flesh.
You cannot open them.
Yeah.
You will break them if you open them. Impossible. They like have this sophisticated system in there where it's locked into the interlocks with the glass. So once you close it as tightly as possible, you cannot reopen it.
Well, they somehow or another figured a workaround to get in there and open it. And when they did that, they achieved an unprecedented number of gold medals. I mean, they dominated the Sochi Olympics in Russia.
I'm pissed, bro. I'm hot because I'm hot. And we know it. Like, we know it. Pull up I don't even want to get into
Please, get into it.
So pull up I lost in the quarterfinals of the Olympic Games in 2016. There's a guy named Anwar Godoyev. I just want you to see a picture of this guy. You tell me.
Was this in Rio?
Clean. This was in Rio.
In Rio, weren't a lot of the Russians, they were kicked out of Rio because of Sochi?
They did the most failed test by Russia in all Olympic sports. First was track and field. Second was weightlifting. Third was wrestling. Wrestling was number 3 out of all Olympic sports. However many programs there are, I'm sure there are a ton of sports. You've talked about it. Wrestling was 3rd. They pro-date all these samples. So they're popping guys from 2008, 2012. And they're saying, you know what? This guy was on a substance. He was on, some sort of performance-enhancing drug. So we're going to strip him of his medal, and we're going to give the guy that took 5th place the bronze medal instead. But at that point, it's such a different experience. You never got to stand on the podium. You never got to travel the world and tell everyone about your medal. You never got to get that check that was associated with whatever success that you had. That
and also,
sponsor
someone
that
taking away someone's gold medal and then giving it to you is not the same.
It's not the same. It's not the same. So it's life-changing experience that you miss out on because these guys are being unhealthy and just straight up cheaters. So like, there's a certain amount of disdain that I have for Russia. I respect them because they're tremendous wrestlers. Not everyone cheats. But there are those who do. And it's well known in the wrestling community. And so at this point, we have had to just accept it and try to beat them. You just got to beat them because it doesn't matter. They are so powerful. The IOC is so powerful that regardless of what they do, Thomas Bach and the IOC will never make a stance in which they will completely ban Russia. So they've banned Russia from the Olympic Games, but the athletes that test cleanly can still compete under a different flag. So ultimately, it'd be like the independent Republic of Russia that they can still compete in, but the Russian flag will not be visible in Tokyo or in Paris in 2024.
Really?
You cannot compete under the Russian national flag.
Really?
Done.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So they've been banned from the Olympic Games, their governing body, Russia itself. So all Russian athletes will have to go through a testing process, and then they will be able to compete as independent athletes under a different flag, but not the Russian flag.
That's bananas.
And that's how far we've come, bro. And like, I've seen so many athletes in track and field and weightlifting and wrestling that have seen other athletes get stripped and then have been given their medals years later, and all they get is an Instagram post.
Yeah, it's not,
bro. Like,
you didn't get a chance to win.
It's not cool. It's not the same, and it's sad because it's the butterfly effect, right? Because it messes up the ripple of the entire bracket, right? So it's like you beat this guy, and then he loses here, and this guy goes here, and this guy retires, or he changes weight classes. Like, there's just so many things that just happen because of this. So it doesn't make me happy. It doesn't sit well with me. But at this point, like, what do you do? Like, I mean, you blow the whistle enough times, but you just got to do what you can to avoid it. And the only way to do it is beat them. I think in wrestling, we have kind of like the biggest margin of error, because just because someone's in great shape doesn't mean you can't beat them in wrestling. There's so much precision and technical skill that's associated with it that you can still overcome that steep hill.
But that's a problem with the Russians as well, because they're very proficient.
They're freaking
very good.
They're freaking
so
good.
technical.
Man, the wrestlers in these, provinces and Caucasus are insane at the sport. Like from birth, they are competing and training at the highest level. It's unlike like here, you got the youth sports and you play games and you play freeze tag with your buddies at practice and you do a couple of rope climbs, you're done. Like these guys are training like Olympians at 8 years old. They're doing back bridge kickovers and they're learning 5-point throws, and they're just technically savvy at a much earlier age because they're bred for this. We think we have it hard here. Like poverty here is nothing like poverty in other countries, especially, in like Ossetia or Chechnya and all these places. Like it's just a different vibe there. So they have some amazing wrestlers.
An amazing motivation too with that poverty.
Oh, it's life-changing. They're tied into the government. The U.S. is the only country that their Olympic team is not government funded. The only country in the world where our Olympic team is funded privately by donations, corporate sponsors. That's it. We're the only country in the entire world. Every country in the world has the government funding the way that they operate and making sure that they are competing at a high level.
That's got to be an incredible disgrace for Russia to be eliminated from the 2020 and 2024 Olympics.
Yeah, well, when you stand on top of the podium, bro, there's a certain amount of pride that comes with seeing your flag raised above all else. That is a special moment. And so for them, I don't know, because is it pride or is it financial incentive? Is it just being an Olympic champion?
Let me ask you this. What if a guy wins in 2008
okay.
and pops? Like they retroactively test the samples,
yeah.
And then he is he still capable of competing in the future, or is he eliminated forever?
Well, it depends. I mean, if you pop from a few years ago, then maybe, I don't know, maybe they prodate your suspension and say, okay, let's say if you got suspended on that day for 2 years post that day, all of your results in that period of time will probably be eliminated. But I don't think they would say
argument. But I've also heard the argument that if you're cheating, you should be eliminated for life.
For life?
And that's the only way to stop cheaters. Is that like if you want to stop someone from doing something, it's prestigious as the Olympic gold medal.
That's a
the
death sentence. I don't know.
Games. I know it's death sentence, but I mean you're cheating.
Yeah.
You're cheating.
You're cheating.
It's a thing. Like the whole reason to win the Olympics is for glory and for the opportunity for sponsorships for Americans and
but that's
obviously
why,
other
though.
countries.
That's why they're doing it, man.
Yeah.
Well,
it's political glory. And when Russia had it in the Sochi Olympics, it's not like a coincidence.
They're following that medal count closely, bro. Don't let anybody fool you. That medal count every year at every Olympic Games is something that us in the village as athletes and the presidents of each particular respective country, they're following that. They want to win. They want to be the best.
Of course.
That's big to them. So above all else, some people are willing to take some crazy chances to be successful because they know the incentives that will follow them getting their hand raised. But, some people operate with character and they're like, you know what? Win or lose, I'm not doing these things.
I think, though, with Russia, and this was pretty clear because of this documentary.
They don't have a choice.
They don't have a choice. Yeah,
they don't have a choice.
Exactly. What was this wrestler that you wanted to say? What was the video?
It was Anwar Gadoyev. Just pull up a photo. There's a photo of him. He's like super vascular.
Well, how about Karelin? I mean, Karelin's one of the craziest examples ever. His parents were tiny little folks. They were like 5'5", and he was built like a human panther. That's a big fella.
That's a guy.
That's achievable naturally with superior genetics. I mean, it is possible.
Superior. But if you look at all the other Russians that I've wrestled over the last decade, none of them have that level of stature. But it is whatever, man. Like we've exchanged matches. He's beaten me. I've beaten him. But he beat me when it counted at the Olympic Games, and so
he does look pretty stacked.
He's tough, man. He's a stud.
And this was in Rio?
This was in Rio. This is a game changer.
So,
bro.
And you are suspicious?
I'm a little, yeah. I am.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest. I'm a little suspicious. I probably get a lot of heat for it, and Russians probably won't be happy with it.
But even if he didn't test positive then, the odds of him using steroids up before then, or using some sort of performance, whether it's EPO for training to get to where he got to, like physically.
Yeah.
You know, you keep a lot of the gains, no matter what.
That's the hard part about it is within that space, if you don't have a choice, fine, right? You know, Joe, listen, if you want to be on a podcast, you have to do this.
Right.
And
if the government tells you, hey, you want to compete for the Russian team, you have to take this.
Or you can go be a construction worker for the rest of your life making minimum wage. You're like, I'll take that podcast. Give me that.
Right.
So I think it's a very different vibe there. Like they don't have opportunity outside. Like they can't go to university. They don't go to school. Russian wrestlers don't go to college. They don't go to universities and get 4-year degrees and get masters and go on to the corporate world. They don't do that. It's either you are an Olympic champion or they will choose a job for you. And it's probably not one that's super enticing. Or you will work in some sort of organized, syndicate.
Yeah.
It's just different. It's different.
Yeah.
But, it's that's the way they operate there. And
it's got to be infuriating for you, though, to see the results like the Sochi Olympics. And I understand why you wouldn't want to watch that documentary, but I encourage you to watch it.
I got to watch it.
Yeah. It's so intense,
It makes me uncomfortable because it's hard to – I'm not a guy that, is going to accuse someone of something that I can't prove.
Right.
And that's not proven, right? It's like this whole election fraud thing. It's like, no, I'm telling you it happened. I'm like, okay. So – for me to claim that this guy is on steroids just because he's vascular and muscular is a difficult thing for me to do. But I've heard so many grumblings for such a long period of time that I'm like, bro, come on. At this point, after, all of the conversations that happened after Icarus and after them being suspended and WADA and USADA covering up all these tests and all this crazy, crazy happening in all sorts of sports, I'm like, bro, this state-sponsored doping is a real thing. They're killing people that are blowing the whistle in Russia.
Yep.
Killing people. So I'm like,
well, this Grigory guy is in witness protection in America. He's hiding. They took all his money away. They took his family's home away in Russia. He can't see his family again for the rest of his life. It's terrible. The situation's terrible.
Yeah, man, it's wild. Yeah, it's funny because I know this is going to cause a stir within the Russian wrestling community. So I'm anticipating the backlash that's going to happen immediately after this goes on. But
you are acknowledging their skill too, though. You're doing both.
No. Listen, they're tremendous wrestlers, but I stand by what I said. That's how I feel, and it is what it is. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many people that have been accused of it. If enough people say bad things about you, chances are it might be happening. It's you're always the common denominator. How is that possible? So I'm a guy that I'm a purist. I always want to operate with integrity because it's just what I do. Number one, I love my body, so I'm not going to just put nonsense in it. Number two, I want to protect the integrity of the sport, right? It's the spirit of the sport. We compete to see who really has trained the hardest, who's done the most, sacrificed the most, and been disciplined. That's why we do what we do. If you're bringing PEDs within the sports world, it is very difficult to really judge who the best competitor is. And that's what we're trying to do. So it's like playing a video game. If I'm playing Madden and I got a cheat code and all my guys' stats and attributes are up to 99s, and I'm trying to play you with an average roster, how can you win?
Right.
How can you win? You can't win. You can't win, bro. So it's really hard to experience because I've sacrificed all my life to be great at this. And so when someone does it the improper way, and I don't know what they're doing, I don't know how hard they're training, but I know what I do personally. So yeah, it bothers me.
Have you ever had a conversation with a Russian that spoke English about any of this?
No, I have not. But I probably will soon. Honestly, I invite someone from the Russian delegation to have this conversation with me, but a understandable one, not one of denial. Right.
Yeah.
Not one of denial. One hey, listen, we have had some guys. They have dabbled in it. It's I'm not going to be see, told you, go get them. You know what I mean? It's I want a conversation where damn, okay, I understand, but why? But how? Okay, now is it possible that you guys have guys that are not doing this? Are they just amazing wrestlers? Do they just have the technical superiority, and that's why they've been so successful for a long period of time? Like, is that what you have, or is this a large part of what you do? And are they forced into it? And, their backs are against the wall, and, their hands are tied. There's nothing they can do about it. So I'm willing to have an open conversation to understand it. I'm not just out here accusing them for the sake of making them look bad, because I've seen them train. They work hard. I've seen them learn technique, and I've seen the structure and the system and systematic approach they have to their sport. They're great at their craft. But I also have seen guys that have been jacked up, and then I've seen them post-career, and they look puny. And I'm like, man, how's that possible?
Right.
So I'm trying to navigate the different dynamics of this whole experience without being this jerk that's like, hey, you guys are no good, because they're good wrestlers.
Well, they're great wrestlers, and they're very technical, but they're also a part of a program that has been proven to be corrupt.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's an unfair thing to say.
Yeah, that's
particularly
the bottom line.
when you pay attention to what happened at the Sochi Olympics and pay attention to the fact, what you just said, that in 2020 and 2024, they can't fly the Russian flag. That's not discrimination.
That's not.
It's a punishment.
It's
a punishment.
Obvious, yeah.
It's punishment from mass state-sponsored doping.
It's happening.
Yeah, it's real.
It's real.
It's 100% real.
It's real, bro.
Yeah, I mean, the documentary, I'm telling you, man, please watch it. It's bonkers. I watched it like this the whole time. My mouth was wide open, like, what? And the guy just stepped in shit. The guy making the Brian Fogel just lucked into the craziest story.
Like, that's state-sponsored. Here, USADA, they don't care about us. Like, they don't care about the athletes. So whoever pays WADA whoever, is taking the test, they either are so fearful or they're just in cahoots and they're getting...
Well, the IOC and WADA, they switch executives back and forth. That was also part of the thing that they discussed. It's like people from WADA go to work for the IOC people go to work for
I've never
WADA.
gotten any breaks here. And I've never seen anyone in the wrestling community, at least American wrestling, get any breaks from USADA. They are always at our heads.
Same with the UFC.
So I'm like,
USADA tests UFC fighters.
I've never seen a break. So when I see that, I'm jealous, bro. Because I'm like, this dude probably has to train less. He probably doesn't have to update his whereabouts. You know what I mean? He doesn't have someone following him around. Doesn't have to, have a phlebotomist take blood and, collect urine samples all the time. And, there's one weekend, I got tested like 4 times in the same weekend.
Why?
And I'm like, I'm asking the same thing, bro. I'm like, why? I tested yesterday. What could I have taken between yesterday and today that would have enhanced me so much that I could have won today? I'm sure there's some things.
Yeah, but the fact that you would be willing to take that risk. So they're probably thinking like, oh, let's see if someone does it right after we test them. Right. We'll test them again the next day just in case.
Just in case.
But
they
still,
try to get you.
That's crazy.
They're not doing that in Russia. So no. I'm like,
no.
I guarantee that whoever I have to compete against is not up at 5 a.m. with a dude banging on their door.
That's a problem too, though. Why the fuck did they think that that's okay to interrupt your sleep?
I actually do that purposely. So I put them early because at any other time of the day, you have to let them know where you are. So let's just say you tell them, I'm going to be at the crib today. Then all of a sudden you're like, shoot, I ran out of batteries. I got to run to Target real quick. And then they show up at your house as soon as you pull off your block. And now they're waiting for you, and you're gone, and there's traffic, and the line's long, and all of a sudden it takes you an hour and a half, what you thought was going to be a 20-minute ride, and they only give you an hour window. So now you get back, and they're gone.
Report all of your whereabouts, not
all
just
of your whereabouts.
What city you're in?
All of your whereabouts.
Oh, that's so crazy.
So you have to give them an hour time that you're at home every day. What? So there's an hour window every single day, and you test quarterly, or you update your whereabouts quarterly. So every 3 months you do your whereabout update. You give them an hour slot. I try to put it as early as possible because I'm like, I'm going to be in bed. There's no way I'm going to be out of my house between 5 and 6 a.m. I'm always going to be.
Oh my God. But then they interrupt your sleep.
They do. And they knock like the police. Shout out Dave Carl. you saw it. Boom, boom, boom. Doorbell, boom, boom, boom.
Oh my God.
Kids are up. They're crying. They're in our bed. They're downstairs. But I try to do it early. So 2 things. I know I'm home and I know I'll have to pee. Right? If they wake me up out of my sleep, I haven't taken my first pee of the morning.
Is it a blood test in the morning as well?
Sometimes. It depends. They've just recently started doing blood tests over like the last year or so. And so
That's even
like
more
they're
annoying.
on you. So there have been a lot of people that have been suspended just because they didn't update their whereabouts. So like you'll go somewhere and you'll be like, right here. I'm like, I'll be home today. And then all of a sudden our podcast runs long. I'm here for 3-4 hours and they're at the crib waiting and no one's home.
Well, I've talked to fighters that when they had to choose between UFC and Bellator, there was two decisions, two things that led them towards Bellator. One, sponsors. They could have their own sponsors, whatever sponsors they like. They don't have to be tied to Reebok. And two, no USADA. So they don't have anybody banging on their door. They just get normal drug tests. Normal drug tests when they have weigh-ins and that.
So crazy story. One time I got tested. I was just graduating from college. I was living in an apartment on my own. I was still single. And I went out the night before. I was like out with some friends at the bar having a few beers. And I left my keys in the bar, lost my keys. So I had to sleep in our locker room. I slept in our locker room at the university. And so I remember waking up the next morning. It was a guy from USADA, Dave, like, hey, JB, I'm at your house and you have an hour to get here. And I'm like, I don't have my keys. I can't even get into my house. And so I called Dave. I'm like, Dave, I lost my keys last night. I really don't know where they are. Is there any way else we can get tested? And he was like, yeah, if you can just find a bathroom somewhere else, you can get tested. So there's a Panera Bread right down the street from my house. So I'm like, all right, Panera. We go to Panera Bread. We get there. So if you know anything about USADA testing, they have to watch you pee. And so, bro, super random. I'm in Panera Bread down the street from my house with two dudes. This guy's behind me. It's like, all right, I need you to wash your hands, put your cup up here. All right, pull your pants down to your knees. I got my pants down to my knees.
Down to your knees?
Yeah, because they have to make, you can't just
make sure it's not a rubber dick.
Fly, like it's got to be, and
Yeah.
they need to see you actively pee in this cup.
That's hilarious.
So I'm in Panera Bread with this guy behind me, pants down to my knees, like down the street from my crib, like super embarrassed. I'm like, please, God, no one will walk in here.
Are you in a stall at least?
In a stall, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in a stall.
Because if you're in front of the urinal, everybody would be like, what are these
Sir,
guys
are you
doing?
okay? Do you need help? I'm like, I'm good. I know this guy. Do you still need help?
He's just checking to make me pee.
Yeah, it was interesting times, bro. But yeah, I pride myself on what I put into my body, taking care of what I do, and that's why I'm always weary out of respect to Kill Cliff and what you guys have provided.
Oh, I get it.
I'm always just like, if I don't know it and it's not my own, I don't eat it.
You should be wary. Yeah, but look, a lot of UFC fighters been popped for accidental
crazy stuff,
cross contamination.
Yeah,
freaking dick pills. Yeah, a lot of things happen. Yeah,
I'm okay in that department.
I'm real concerned about gene therapy. I'm really concerned about that. What we're ready for soon because of there's things like CRISPR and these gene editing tools. I'm concerned with super athletes that are going to be produced by other countries before we get a chance to do that in the United States.
Years or so,
yeah, I really think that. I think the kids that they're developing right now, there's all sorts of different genes that they could alter, switch on, switch off, myostatin inhibitors, all these different things can enhance.
Is it that serious though?
What do you mean?
Like, there's a ton, billions of dollars in athletics.
There's so much money. Well, think about it this way. How about it this way? Put it this way. Think about how much money they earn in the Olympics and how little they give to you. Just think of that. Think of the athletes. Who the fuck? Who's making money in the Olympics? I'll tell you who should be making the money.
The networks.
The athletes should be making most of the money, but they're making none of it. It's crazy. Yeah. It's the biggest scam in all of athletics.
You get a medal,
have this
though.
Thing. Oh, nice. You get a beautiful medal. How much does that cost? You got to think about how much attention if you have the Olympics, you have a guaranteed audience. People they want to see it. There's nationalism and pride, and everybody wants to see all these different sports that maybe they enjoy. Maybe it's gymnastics. Maybe they used to swim. They want to watch wrestling. And no one's getting paid. And they're just raking in all the cash. They got fucking commercial after commercial. It's sponsored by this company and their banners are here. And there's so much money. And the athletes don't get any of it. It's crazy.
I get it.
So when you have all this nationalism, all this national pride from Russia and China and all these different countries, you don't think they're going to do some gene editing? You don't think they're going to take, look, I'm going to tell you a story about Yoel Romero. You know Yoel Romero, right? Yoel Romero is tested by USADA all the time, right? He's clean. And no one believes he's clean because he's one legitimate freak of nature. If you look at him, Yoel Romero went to a doctor once because the UFC, he had fractured his orbital in a fight. Yoel Romero, they brought him to his doctor. The doctor examines him and then calls the UFC and goes, "Where did you get this guy?" And they go, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "He is a specimen." And they go, "Yeah, he's amazing, right?" He goes, No, you don't understand. I've never seen a human like him." The guy's like, "I have been working on people for decades." He goes, "The tendons in his eye are 3 times larger than a normal person's. Like everything about him is freakish." But that's just genetics. That's wild. Some women are born with giant tits. Some people have crazy big noses, right?
Yeah.
Yoel Romero is just a freak. What if you developed a whole army of Yoel Romeros?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible.
Yeah, what if you figured out how to turn on all these genes? What if you looked at what he does? I mean, he's a perfect physical specimen. What if you took that perfect physical specimen and
Shaq
you recreated?
And Serena Williams.
Yes, or Kobe or LeBron James. LeBron James is a giant super athlete. What if you took that and just made thousands of them? And you populated your whole team.
And put them all on Fight Island. Made your own country.
Like a Bruce Lee movie. I mean, I don't think that's outside of the realm of possibility. And that's what I'm concerned with. What I'm concerned with is that over here, we're using USADA and knocking on doors at 5 o'clock in the morning. And there's countries that have less morals and ethics.
They're like 2040 already.
And they're
not even thinking about right now.
Yeah. Our country is trying to bust our athletes. Their country is trying to help them cheat. I mean, how crazy is that balancing act?
Yeah.
That's a crazy balancing act. And even though the United States is obviously very competitive in the Olympics and does amazing and wins a shitload of gold medals and has amazing athletes, you got to think that these countries that are using these new tools, if they get ahead of us with this kind of shit, I mean, it could be real weird.
I don't think we'll ever lose, though, bro. Like, we have, I mean,
that's because you got that championship mindset. You don't give a fuck.
Listen, we're gonna get it, and that's what America stands for. Like, what we have is we are always in great shape, and we're tough as nails. We're gonna fight to the death every single time. So, like, no matter how savvy you are, technically skilled, how much access to resources you have, it's always going to be a fight whenever you wrestle an American.
Right. But remember how you feel about that Russian that might have been on some shit. And if he was, in your head, when you lay in bed and you think you lost that guy, and you look at how he looked, and you look at how muscular and vascular he was, and you go, maybe he's a Yoel Romero, or maybe he's a test. Maybe he's a science project.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We have so much access here that I can't ever imagine a country being better than us at anything just because we have so much structure, we have such great coaching, and we just have such a melting pot of individuals that are making freakish babies all the time. So it's like if you go to Russia, you go to any of these countries, they're not melting pots like we have. So the athleticism and the genetics have not been broadened so much so because there's just a small gene pools that have kind of interbreeded with each other for thousands of years. But here in America, we have people from everywhere that have interbred and created such amazing athletes. You look
That's a very good point.
The smallest athlete in the world, like Simone Biles, who's considered one of the best athletes in the world, to the biggest, like LeBron James. You know, it's amazing what we've been able to create here domestically because no other country has that sort of interracial breeding that we have. And we have such a profound focus on sport too. Like everyone plays sports. Like very few people that you'll ever meet that never played a sport in their entire lives.
That's true.
Very
I mean, you're making real good points. And listen, no one is more pro-America than me. People have to say that.
America.
I love America. I just love the concept of it. I love the fact that it's a country filled with immigrants. That it literally everyone came here. I mean, obviously the origins suck, but what it is now is the best idea of people coming from all other parts of the world trying to seek opportunity and trying to do better for their life and their families. That's the best part of what America is. But I'm just saying, when it comes to competitive international sports, I'm really worried about gene doping. I'm really worried about that shit.
I'm going to come see you 20 years from now.
We'll see.
When they finally unleash their army of genetically modified.
A fucking team full of Corellans.
It's like iRobot, right? Yeah. They just come off the assembly line like...
I really think it's inevitable. With this technology, I think it's inevitable. Whether it's 20 years from now or 30 years from now or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be inevitable for the public, for people too. I think, like right now.
Because how would you do that here? Sounds expensive.
Well, I think it's expensive in the beginning, but I think like cell phones when they first came out were expensive.
Yeah,
and now everybody has one. That's true. Remember did you ever see that movie Wall Street with Gordon Gekko?
Of course, he had the big
ass
purse,
brick.
like with the
He had the big brick, and everybody was like, "Look at him! He's talking.
So
it doesn't
cool.
even have a cord. He's out on the beach. This
and now
is
look
amazing."
at us, we're like chilling.
Yeah. Now everyone has a little phone,
and
it's way more powerful. Technology always improves, and then eventually trickles down to everybody else. The problem is the advantages the people who are the initial early adopters will allow them to accumulate so much wealth and so much success that by the time it trickles down, the game will already be rigged. That's a real worry. It's a real concern when it comes to the haves and the have-nots, when it's implementing technology that changes your biology.
Yeah.
And I think that's coming, man. I really do.
The thing is, what's the alternative, right? Let's say because there's so many things that you can't trigger yourself. So just because we put LeBron James and Serena Williams together doesn't mean that they're going to create a freak. Like chances are they're going
to create a freak.
Let's be honest. More opportunities present themselves, but every
Most
person
likely,
is different.
Right.
You look at, I want you to go and take families like you have some, for example, right?
People
like let's
vary,
say the Mannings and the Gronkowskis and the Joneses, but there are a lot of families that have a tremendous athlete and then they have an average athlete. Or no athlete, period.
Yeah.
My parents didn't even play sports in high school.
Really?
No.
That's crazy.
And like now, given my dad's 6'2", he had like a tall frame, long arms. My mom's short, but what they created was me and my sister. So I have 3 older siblings. I came from a non-traditional household, kind of like a fragmented family. My dad had 2, my mom had 1. They were married. They had me. And so I have no full-blooded relatives, only half siblings. But all of us vary in athletic degree. My sister and I, who were raised in the same household, she dabbled in basketball a little bit, was decent. My brother, he was always the better athlete of the two of us. He was solid. He played football, ran track. And then my oldest sister never really played sports at all. She grew up in the city. But anyway, for me, growing up, I was the runt. Like I was always small. I never was really strong. Never was a physical specimen. But I'm still not a physical specimen. But in relation to wrestling, I am. So like if you saw me play basketball, you'd be like, this dude is terrible. He's not an athlete. But if you see me wrestle, you're like, damn. You know what I mean? So it's like it's in relation to what you do, you would consider yourself an athlete.
Right.
So, while I always wonder what pulls or help someone gravitate to a particular sport. Am I great at wrestling because I just had the frame for it, or did wrestling for so long help me to establish these certain dynamics of my athleticism that were unleashed and unfolded once I actually committed to the sport of wrestling?
I think you're great at wrestling because of your mind. I mean, I think obviously
there
you have
are some
a great
physical attributes.
Sure, you have, but a lot of people have those.
That's true,
and they never get anywhere.
That's true too.
It's your mind. Look,
mind.
At the elite
mind
level,
is strong.
At the elite level, and this is the same with MMA. You have to have everything.
Yeah,
you can't get by. You can't beat a John Jones unless you have everything. You have to have everything. You can't just
consistently.
Yes, consistently. You can't just be a good physical specimen. You have to have the mind.
There are a lot of specimens.
A lot of specimens.
A lot of specimens, not a lot
And
of
when you
legends.
get to like a real like world class level, everybody's a fucking specimen. They're all specimens. So you can't just attribute it to your body, which
That's
obviously you're gifted athletically, but it's the mind.
And I think because I didn't grow up as a specimen helped me to develop my mind. Because I was never the biggest.
Right.
I always had to play catch up with my older siblings. Always wanted to prove myself to my dad. And so it was always a different level of experience that I had in comparison to my teammates, where I would see them skip runs. I see them hide in the hallways during, mile runs inside of our high school. I would see them, hang out in the locker room long when we were doing conditioning after practice. And I was like, I didn't have that luxury because I thought in order for me to win, I had to outwork everyone because I was small.
Right.
I was small. So it took me a long time to be the best. Like, I only won one state title in high school, and it was my senior year. I didn't win a state championship until I was a senior. I've won more world championships than I did state championships.
That's crazy.
So, crazy because I
that is such a
how
crazy
I got
statistic.
to this level, like I wasn't the best growing. I was never the best.
Wow.
So I had to develop like mentally, and it was just like something that through years and years of concerted effort, it was never like this aha moment, like, damn, I'm really good now.
Well, that is a thing you see with really, really talented people.
Yeah.
That sometimes really talented people that are just natural, they
Yeah.
never go far.
Yeah.
And sometimes
You always have it.
yeah, and it comes too easy.
That's when you hear the gamers like, oh, this guy's a gamer. Don't worry about him. He'll be ready. He'll be on when the lights arrive and you lock the cage behind him. But how often can you do that?
Well, the problem is other people are gamers and they're also disciplined, and that guy's gonna fuck you,
You got
up.
the disciplined
Yeah.
gamer. It's like
this, like when you get a guy like a Michael Jordan, like what creates a guy like Michael Jordan? Extreme competitiveness plus physical gifts
Yeah.
plus discipline plus the mind. The intelligence to figure out the correct path to get to the hoop. The intelligence to figure out what's the right strategy to trick someone and go this way when you want to go that way. What's the right tactics to implement in a fight? What's the right move to use
so
at the
much.
right time? There's so much.
So much,
So
bro.
these gamers, well, this guy's a fucking gamer too, but he's been working and you've been slacking. And, you've been doing things you shouldn't have done. You've been partying. You've been doing whatever. And you thought you can get by because you think you're the fucking man. Well, he thinks he's a fucking man too.
But
he's been sleeping.
I know.
He's been eating right.
But there's certain prerequisites that you have to possess in order to be great.
Yes.
So let's say you have a guy that is those things, all of those things, tremendous success. Then you have a guy who's just a gamer, super talented, doesn't really want to work hard, has moderate success, can become a champion, loses his belt the very next defense. And then you have a guy who works significantly hard, but he's not a specimen.
Yeah, that
He just
happens
doesn't have
too.
the athleticism. So I've seen some of the hardest working guys ever do everything that I do, but they just can't
They
win.
can't do it. Yeah.
They just can't win. But
Life is not fair.
it's not fair.
It's not fair.
And that's what's scary for me with my boy, because I'm like, I'm Olympic champ. Expectations are for him to be an Olympic champ. There's no father-son Olympic gold medalist combinations. It's impossible. But I want him to be great at something. What that's going to be, I don't know. He plays soccer. I never played soccer. He plays violin. I never played an instrument. So there is some things that he's fine-tuning that I never got a chance to have access to. So I'm hoping that we can find something that he'll be great at, but he loves wrestling.
Well, I think the best
He loves
gift
wrestling.
that you could give him is just encourage him to find his path.
Yeah.
The problem is when you're in the shadow of a great man. Like it's a quote. I forget who said it, but find me a great man who's the son of a great man. It's very hard.
That's hard.
It's very hard. It's very hard.
But wouldn't you say that success begets success? You want to be
Yes.
who you are, and you have so many inspirational people sit in this chair
Yeah, but
daily.
that's a different animal. They're not my dad.
I know, but who?
It's the thing is growing up, developing your developmental cycle with a great man. It's very hard for me because men want to be the lion, right? That's why the lion kicks the young lions out of the fucking den. Like, get out of here, bitch! Right? Because you
back.
can't be the
And when you
king.
come
I'm
back,
the
you gotta
king.
fight. Yeah.
You can't be the king. Well, this is a part of growing up as a man, and some men know how to navigate that with their children, and they figure it out. They figure out a way to let their
that's
son.
deep.
It is deep.
That's deep.
You got to know when to back
That's
off.
a heavy burden to carry.
But you also have to have the respect of your son too. Like, they have to respect you. They can't disrespect you.
Yeah.
And there's an instinct to disrespect the man to prove that you're the man. So it's tricky.
That's right.
And they're not even being a bad person. It's a genetic instinct that
my
we
wife's
have.
got to kind of curb me a lot too, because she's like, listen, do you want your son to be a great athlete? Do you want to have a great relationship with him? And she's like, you have to.
That's deep.
You have to treat him with respect. So the thing that we're on now is, don't humiliate him, especially in front of people. You talk to him the way that you want him to be addressed by other men. Would you want another man talking to your son that way? And so she always challenges me that way. It's like, hey, listen.
That's very wise.
If you want him to be a leader at someday, he can't have this subservient attitude and bow to authority because you've always been at his head for so long. You have to allow him to grow up and for him to operate as a man. And you have to treat him with respect. You can't humiliate him in front of people. You can't belittle him. You have to treat him like a man. I know it's hard. I know he's frustrating and hard to raise, but he's 6. He's not doing this to spite you. He's just 6. He doesn't understand. So at some point, do you want him to love and hug you as an old man, or do you want him to say, "What's up, Dad?" I want hugs. I want an intimate relationship with my son. I hope that
your wife is very wise.
Yeah, she's a good woman.
That's a great perspective too.
She's a good woman.
Because sometimes it's hard when you're in the middle. Like, I have children. I know what it's like when you're in the middle of raising kids. Like, there's chaos, and this one wants attention while you're upset with this one, and then there's another one behind you breaking glasses. Like, the kids are crazy.
Like, hey,
they're wild.
They're
little people, and they have their own little challenges, and they have their own. I mean, every little child is the master of their own little world, and it's very difficult to manage all of those simultaneously. But what she said about your kid, that's very wise. And I think that's whatever your kid does, he's going to understand, like I said, about what you do, that there's a certain requirement for excellence.
Yeah.
And who you are as a man, not just as an athlete, but who you are as a man is going to reflect.
Yeah, that's real. That's real. And that's the hardest part about this is not only how do I want to present myself to the world, how do I want to present my kids to the world? I put some pressure on my boy. I'm like, hey, listen, when you leave this house, you represent the Burroughs name. And that's big shoes to fill. But, bro, like, listen, people do either one of two things. They either fold because of pressure or they rise to expectations. You have the ability to be great. I'm going to put you in position to be great. I promise you, if you listen to your mom and dad, you will have a great life. Because I'm going to do my due diligence with my faith, with my reading, with the things that I learned to make sure that I put you in position to be successful. All I ask is that you work hard and that you treat people with respect and that you listen to mom and dad. You listen to us, your life will be great. And so I'm trying to teach him that, but he's still, he's 6, so he's combative a little bit, and he's trying to figure things out.
Bro, every 6-year-old is.
Yeah, I know, right? He says you take it personal sometimes, though. You're like, no, there's no other 6-year-old kid like that. He did that on purpose. He spilled the milk on the floor because he knew I had a long practice last night. And
sometimes there's a little of that too. Sometimes they cause a little trouble just to get some extra attention.
Yeah, that's it, bro. That's it. And it's
rewarding too, though, man. I mean, when your kids hug you, I'm sure. Like, for me, when I come home and they run to me and hug me, it's the greatest feeling on earth. It's these little people that you created, and they love you.
People.
They love you so much. They just can't wait to hug you.
I know.
And you have fun with them. It's like, it's a beautiful thing, man. And a lot of people, they're going through it with varying degrees of stress in their life and bad relationships. And you and I are both very lucky that we have good relationships.
Yeah. You need them, bro.
Yeah, you need that, man. That helps you more than anything in life to achieve. And I remind my wife of that all the time, that she's one of the reasons why I can be successful.
Yeah,
because I don't have this other conflict that I have to deal with all the time. Like I say, I have friends that are in bad relationships, and it hampers other things they do in their life.
Are they successful?
Some of them are, and some of them aren't. And some of them probably should be more successful than they are. And I think that bad relationship thing, that extra conflict, like if you only you have a certain amount of bandwidth for your resources. Like, I use this point all the time, but I'll say it again. If you have say if the amount of resources you have in your mind, and put it in a number, like 100 units, Well, if you have a shit relationship, that's just eating up 30 units no matter what you do. You only have 70 units.
Every day.
And when then the guy down the street who has a great relationship with his family and his wife, that guy's got 100 units. And that guy has an advantage. If you're both doing the same things, he has more resources to apply to his thing because he doesn't have this constant throbbing distraction and angst and this thing. Like, you can't wait. He doesn't want to go home. His fucking wife's home. He wants to go to the bar and pound shots. Like, what the fuck am I doing, man?
Why did I do this?
That's a lot of people, man.
You know what's crazy, though, is like you need a wife that understands your ambition, understands that you're driven. And that's why my wife's been such a blessing because I was an Olympic champion before we were married. And so initially when I was courting her, we're like, okay, well, where are we going to live? What are we going to do? Am I going to be able to continue to pursue my career? And for a while it was a battle because, you know, she extremely smart, master's degree from Columbia in journalism, wrote for the Buffalo newspaper. And she had to make this transition where she had built this reputation for herself to now all of a sudden she leaves her home of Buffalo, New York, comes to live with me in Lincoln, Nebraska, and no one knows her. And so like, there was times where we would conflict and battle because people would be like, man, you're so lucky. Like, you married JB. And she'd be like, well, I had a life of my own.
Right.
I was an individual that was driven and I had people that recognized me and I've won awards and done tremendous things. And it took a while for us to really kind of settle into this space where I encouraged her to come alongside with me and where she could kind of be that helpmeet and make the necessary sacrifices for our relationship. And man, women lose so much in marriage, bro. Like, I love what we're able to do and provide as the breadwinners and make sure our families are taken care of. But women lose so much, bro, of their identity. They lose their name. They lose their families. And whatever dreams it was that they possessed before they married us, a lot of times they lose that because now they're at home with the kids, taking care of them while we're out pursuing our aspirations. And so for me, it was important to bring my wife alongside me. It was like, this isn't just my thing. This is our thing. When I wrestle, we all wrestle. When I win, we all win. As opposed to, hey, I got to go to practice. See you later. Like, that's why wherever I go, my family comes with me. All competitions,
That's
most
awesome.
training camps, because it's easy to have that conflict where when I'm in the wrestling room, I feel like I need to be with my fam. When I'm with my fam, I feel like I need to, you know, be in the wrestling room training. So I think the great thing about having a great wife is she understands that this is what I love to do. This is what makes me feel purposeful and passionate. And so she allows me to do that because she knows that when I return home, I'm going to give my best effort because I'm whole. Because I've been able to do what I love, and there's no resentment built up. But if she's taking me away from that, she's gonna be, I'll be half of myself, and it'd be really hard for me to coexist there. You know what I mean?
I totally understand, and I think it points to what we were saying earlier that you are a champion in life. And you apply the same principles that led you to become a champion wrestler to become a human being that does the right thing, a human being that behaves their best, that thinks their best, that does the right things. And that is why I think you should go into public speaking. Because I think you can teach that shit.
There it is again. That's 3 times. Got to go now.
I think you can, man. That's what I always think of athletes in terms of like what they're going to do when it's over. Because I've seen a lot of bad stories. It's particularly with fighters.
Scary.
Well, particularly with fighters nobody wants to talk about. A lot of them are mentally compromised after their career's over. They're dealing with depression. They're dealing with headaches. They're dealing with traumatic brain injury. Some of them get treatment. Some of them don't. Some of them start drinking.
So you think CTE exists?
It's 100% real.
And UFC?
100%. There's no doubt about it. If you're getting hit in the head, you're getting traumatic brain injuries. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you watch some of these fights that are so exciting. Like, look, for the majority, they're going to be fine, and they'll know when to get out. And there's modalities, there's different recovery methods, there's different things you could do to try to help yourself and to achieve a healthy life. And it can be done. But there's guys who don't do that, and there's guys who stay in too long, and there's guys who take those extra shots to the head when they shouldn't, and there's guys who they have bad training methods where they slug it out in training. That's real common as well. So they're going into fights already concussed. They're going into fights with already taking too many shots. That some guys lose their career in the training room because in the training room they're going to war. They're beating the shit out of each other. They're going full blast. And then there's other guys who are training and fighting intelligently, and they have much longer careers.
That's why I love what Conor's doing right now. And I just follow him on social, so I don't really know personally, but it seems like he's very strategic about what he does now because he's got a lot of money, right? When you get money, you start to think about things differently. You don't have to grind like you used to, but you also can bring a certain level of professionalism around what it is that you do. So, wrestling is kind of a primitive sport where you just get in the room, bang it out for a couple hours, do a bunch of sprints on the bike, and you go home. Where I feel like guys like Connor now, they have a nutrition or a nutritionist or a dietitian. They've got wrestling coach, boxing coach, jiu-jitsu coach. And then the camp is surrounded around him. Like he's not in a room with 12, 15 other guys that are just like rolling around and, with a single coach. He's like, I need one training partner for each discipline, and that's it. And I think that's how it goes, and that's how it should go. You shouldn't have to take reps. You shouldn't have to have people punching you.
Right.
You shouldn't have to have people double-legging you, into the wall and putting you down. You should be doing all of the reps.
Well, they're gonna have to do that too, though. You need MMA sparring. You need something that
sparring, but controlled sparring, because you need someone who's gonna come into the room and say, "Listen, this is Connor, bro.
Yeah,
like you're not here to film this and become a star on the internet."
That's true, but let me tell you something. Faraz Zahabi, who's like one of the greatest MMA coaches of all time, Faraz used to pay people to try to knock George St. Pierre out. And he said, you have to put George in danger. He goes, you can't just let him think that he's going to be okay and let him coast. He goes, I want you to put George in danger. He's like, I will give you more money if you can knock him out. Yeah, I will give you a reward if you can knock him out. I don't know if he told George.
If George didn't know, I think that would be...
He might have told him.
That would be pretty cool, actually.
I think he might have told him. I'm not sure, but I know that George is aware of it now. And I know that it made George one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time, but not always. They don't always spar like that.
Is like, George, all right, it's going to be easy, light spar, just have a good time, man. Make sure he's sharp.
He wouldn't lie to him.
And then he go to the guy like, kill him.
No, he wouldn't lie to him. But Faraz is very intelligent. And Faraz's perspective was you have to simulate danger. You have to produce danger. You have to. You're going to experience danger inside that octagon, and it can't be a unique thing. It can't be a foreign thing that you're not accustomed to. So you have to reproduce real danger in sparring, so that when they get into the octagon, their instincts are already honed. I like that. They're already razor sharp.
I like that.
But you can't do it too much because you don't want to get brain damage. But you look at George now at 30, I think he's 37, 38 years old. He's lucid. He speaks well. He's great. He's super healthy.
Well, he got out early, too, though.
Well, he did the right thing. He felt his enthusiasm waning because he was overworked. He was tired. He fought so many times. He just squawked by with a real close decision to Johnny Hendricks.
Doing now?
Well, he's thinking about fighting again. He's not sure if he wants to. I think they were talking about trying to set up a fight with him and Khabib Nurmagomedov. Now, if they could do that, I think George would come back. But I don't think George would come back.
Big money.
Woo!
Crazy. But
that might be the biggest fight in the history of the sport.
The biggest, bro. Even if you're not even a fight fan, everyone knows GSP. GSP was the original superstar.
And he stays in shape. GSP never gets fat. He's
a
ripped.
Professional, man.
He just posted a picture just a few days ago of him after a 3-day fast. What's fucking he doing? Shredded.
So what's he done in the last 5-6 years?
Works his martial arts. He's constantly training. He's constantly doing jiu-jitsu. Always.
He's like, I'm waiting for the right offer.
Look at him. That's
the right
him.
Guy.
Just a couple days ago.
Bro.
He's shredded. He always trains. So when he fought Michael Bisping and won the middleweight title,
3 days of no water. What's the benefits?
No, that's not what it is. It's a water fast.
He just drinks water.
Yeah, just
for 3
water.
days. But they said 3 days no water.
No, that's ridiculous. That's an idiot. That's some dummy who doesn't understand what he's saying.
He's what, 38?
I think so. I think he's 37 or 38.
Damn, I want to look
shredded.
like that.
He's shredded.
5-6 years.
Well, he's dedicated to health and wellness, and he's also dedicated to martial arts. Like he trains because he wants. Yes,
he's been lurking, waiting for the right opportunity to present itself.
Well, that's what he did with Michael Bisping.
So why didn't he fight Conor?
Well, he's too big.
George is too big?
Yeah, George is big.
How big is Conor?
Conor legitimately should be fighting at 155 pounds. He won the title at 145. There's no fucking way in hell George St. Pierre is ever making 145 pounds.
Yeah.
He's much bigger than that.
He's tall, right?
He's wide. He's a thick dude. I mean, Conor has fought at 170. He fought Cowboy at 170, but Cowboy's not really a 170.
But it's Cowboy.
He fought Nate Diaz at 170, and Nate Diaz is not really a 170 either. These guys are capable of making 155. I mean, obviously they weighed 170 when they fought, but
But
I
you
think
got
Connor's
a guy like Kamaru Usman. You're like,
right.
you ain't messing with. That's a different monster.
Exactly. The big 170s, the real strong, powerful wrestlers. They're too big. And I think George is there. George is at that 170. I mean, look, maybe if Kamaru wins against Gilbert Burns, and that would be a crazy fight too. But I think the real big money is in Khabib because it's a super fight. Khabib is undefeated. I think he's 29-0. He's dominated everybody. Yeah. He's the most spectacular example of a champion we've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, he just dominates. That fucking guy just dominates.
It's workmanlike.
He's a monster.
That's what I appreciate about Khabib is that he is very intentional and deliberate with his precision, like almost surgical in the ring. He just walks you down, punch, psh, all right, I'm good.
Well, the Gaethje fight really showed what he was made of because Gaethje has been able to chop everyone's legs apart, and he was landing shots on Khabib. He was lost. And Khabib just kept chasing him down.
Which is crazy because I drank the Kool-Aid. I'm like, well, damn, maybe Khabib is in trouble here. Maybe this is going to be his toughest
he was
test.
In danger, but he wasn't in trouble.
Well,
he was in a dangerous situation. Yes, his leg was in trouble. Yeah. His left leg was getting kicked. Have you ever been kicked in the calf? It's a crazy feeling.
I have not.
Man.
I don't desire to.
Don't do it. It's horrible. It's horrible, man. It makes it's like a jolt. Like the nerves it's such a sore area. Like when you get hit there once or twice, and you lose a lot of your ability to move correctly. A lot of times your feet go numb, and that happened to Michael Chandler in a fight once. He got kicked low. It happened to Henry Cejudo against Mighty Mouse.
Michael Chandler, he couldn't even get his footing back. I remember
your
that.
nerves just stop working. And your foot drops. It's just like you can't get it to work. And you try to step on it, it just gives out on you.
That's crazy. I remember
it happened to Henry. When Henry Cejudo fought Mighty Mouse in the second fight, in the first round, Mighty Mouse kicked him with a low calf kick, and Henry's leg went numb. There's nothing you could do about it. It's a crazy kick. Well, Justin Gaethje is the best at that. He's the best at that. And Khabib was chasing him down, and Justin kept chopping at that leg.
Couldn't get him.
And it was in a bad place. I mean, he'd hurt him. Man, but Khabib is such a fucking monster. Turned out after the fight, Khabib was fighting with a broken foot. So he was doing all that with a broken foot. They x-rayed his foot as a cracked bone.
So that's why I agree with you, but mindset is the most important.
It's everything.
Part of being a champion.
Because Khabib obviously is he's got a great body physically. Yeah. He's physically very strong. He's very athletic. But there's a lot of guys that have that. It's the mind.
The mind.
The mind's everything.
Mind's a powerful thing.
Yeah.
So that's why if you're building the perfect fighter, you have to build their mind first.
That's everything. That's what Cus D'Amato used to hypnotize Mike Tyson. He used to tell Mike Tyson that you don't exist. The task exists. And he used to tell him this when he was 13 years old.
I like that.
Teach him how to break people down. It's not about you. You don't exist. That's just nonsense. It's going to get in the way. The task exists. You have to break this man.
I like that. I'm gonna use that. That's
it's heavy.
You don't exist. The task.
The task exists. Jordan Burroughs, we just did 3 hours. Flew by.
This is dope, bro. Hey, let me.
My pleasure.
Let me give a shout out to the Buffalo Bills, though. Playing well. Are you a football fan?
Nope.
No, you don't watch?
I don't watch any
Bills.
sports.
My wife's from Buffalo, so I grew up in South Jersey, so everyone where I'm from are Eagles fans. And when I got married, met my wife in Buffalo, I'm like, damn, I want to be affiliated with that team. Her uncle Thurman Thomas played for the Bills. Is
that a Bills Mafia t-shirt?
Bills Mafia. So I'm sure you've seen the Bills Mafia.
There you go.
New York State, Buffalo Bills, old school, new school. Great year in the playoffs. Won the AFCs for the first time since in 25 years. Something crazy. And they're playing soon. So
beautiful.
Saturday.
Well, listen.
Colts.
Good luck in your match. It's
Thanks,
either
bro.
This week or next week, whatever it is.
Yeah, we're gonna make it happen.
Yeah.
We're gonna try to figure it out, make it happen.
It's difficult during these COVID times, right?
It's wild. It's a wild time.
It is.
Tracing to, it's wild.
All of it.
I'm ready for it to be over.
Well, thank you, brother. It's been an honor. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, bro.
Appreciate you being here.
Appreciate
Good luck
you.
with everything you do, and seriously, think about what I'm saying.
Yeah, man. I got you.
You could do great things. With
I'm listening. I'm coming for your recommendation.
Do it.
Wherever I go, I'm
Thank
like,
you.
listen, Joe told me that I should.
Jordan Burroughs, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, bro.
Bye, everybody.